You're listening to Power Athlete Radio, a podcast dedicated to empowering your performance every damn day. Join former NFL pro and Power Athlete founder John Wellborn as he dissects the greatest minds in strength, conditioning, and more. So whether your goal is to be the hammer, destroy mediocrity, or simply move the dirt, you've come to the right place. Now with the warm-up done, let the gains begin.
We interrupt this episode for a shameless self-promotion. Everyone's a hero in January, but when it comes to February and beyond, not so much. If you want to be one of the few who punch the entirety of 2024 in its smirking face, then do it with Power Athlete. With an annual subscription, you'll get 365 days of performance-oriented programming delivered to your phone. It's like having a world-class coach, aka me, John Wellborn, in your pocket for less than $1 a day. When you compare it to the month-to-month package, you're scoring a whole 2 months for free. And because I'm feeling extra generous this holiday season, everyone who signs up for a year before January 31st gets a training consult with me and my team worth hundreds of big ones for free. All you have to do is sign up over at www.powerathletehq.com/training. Don't be a just for January athlete. Commit to the cause with Power Athlete and crush 2024 like you hit it with a hammer. Remember, I'll say it again. That's powerathletehq.com/training. Now back to the episode. So what's up? You got married? Congratulations. I was there.
Yeah. You're there for my long and extended wedding, right?
It's very short.
About 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
The longest part was when your wife got up and spoke, and you were totally blown away because you thought that nobody was going to speak. You were just going to high five and get up.
She's like, I just want to acknowledge my friends. So I'm like, all right, whatever you want to do. And then 30 minutes later, I'm like, oh, well, all right. You talked about everybody here. Yeah. It's like, I don't have anything else left. I don't have anything to add. Thanks for coming, folks.
Doc's like, there's my friends over there. All right, let's get some drinks.
Yeah.
Nice. Did you guys go on a trip or honeymoon or anything?
Nah, we did a bit of a honeymoon. Like, we got married at the courthouse in June.
Sure.
And then we went down to that Eagles Pass or something like that.
Eagle Pass, Texas.
Yeah. And that has a hotel there with an observatory, and it's on the water, and had nothing big.
Nice.
So we travel all the damn time anyway. It's like a vacation to be home, actually. It's just like, oh, let's stay home.
Nice.
Get out of bed at 10. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
We don't have kids anymore, we can do things like that.
Yeah. No, kids are the interesting curveball that life throws you.
Yeah.
I'm right in the throes of it.
Yeah, you are. Well, how old's Cash?
Seven. Yeah. The girls are 12.
Yeah, you're still down there.
Oh, the one is my daughter, they go to private school, and my daughter, Jamie, has decided that private school is too small and she wants to go to public school, which I'm not real excited about.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either.
She has 9 kids in her class. One is her sister, and she wants more kids. And I told her, I'm like, okay, you can go for starting for the spring semester, starting, a couple weeks. If you want to go to public school for a semester and see what it's like. And at the end of the year, we'll evaluate grades and whatnot. And if everything,
evaluate what she's learning. Yeah.
So we had a long conversation about the reason we put them in private school,
right?
And the education and the track and what they learn versus what they're taught and the STAR test. And we got into it. And she's like, I just feel that having 9 kids in my class, and one of which is your sister, is just too small. And she also wants to play basketball, wants to play sports, and she's on a bunch of club stuff, but wants to play team. So I was like, all right, you want to try? Like for a semester, but at the end of the year, we're going to do a little bit of V-Val. So I had to go talk to her head.
And how old is she?
12. She's pretty well. I mean, they're still easily influenced, but I feel like my influences.
Man, as soon as she came home and started talking about any kind of mess about people transitioning, I'd be like, you're out of there.
Yeah.
Like, we're gone. Like, you're going back to private school.
So my brother Ed has a lawyer buddy whose son, I forgot where he went. Went to college, came home at the end of the semester. This is like a couple weeks ago. Came home end of semester, and his name is no longer Chris. He's Christy.
Wow.
He called my brother, and he's like, what can I do? Like, what do I have available to me? I'm just like, man, these are interesting times. You send your kid to college, and that's what you come back with.
I mean, all my kids went to UC schools.
And I'm UC school grad too.
It wasn't like that back then. I mean, it was just starting to be like that, but it wasn't anything close to what it is now, I mean, that it's just absolute insanity what they're teaching kids now. I mean, it's not even an education anymore. Like, I think if you did an SAT after college, kids would do worse. Like, I think kids are getting dumber in school, and they're getting their minds full of all sort of activist bullshit. You know, that has nothing to do with.
Oh, you mean the social responsibility piece?
Yeah, I mean all the DEI crap and the transgender stuff, and I mean, I don't know, their climate change and like whatever. It's like all the socialist agenda. All the professors are socialist. You know, it's like 80, 90%, well, probably 95% are like pretty far left. You know, like they're all left of center except one or two here and there. VDH teaches at Stanford. He's the only I'm the only conservative professor there that I know of. You know, and you've heard Jordan Peterson say like I'm the only non-left wing social scientist. Yeah. You know, and he's not even, I wouldn't even consider him conservative, really. I mean, he's like I guess he'd be right of center, but he's definitely not like, he's not like a MAGA guy or something. Like he just kind of, hey, these are the values that make society work. Like kind of let's hover around those. So I guess that makes him a conservative by their standards.
Well, he was saying too, if you put 100 women and 1 man on an island, yeah, you're going to come back 100 years later and there's going to be a flourishing economy. Yeah. You put 100 men and 1 woman on there and you're going to come back and there's going to be a whole bunch of skulls.
Right. 100. Well, they did the same thing with the trans. Right?
No, it was 100 men and it was like you have 100 skulls.
Yeah.
So we're getting to go see Jordan Peterson. So we got to see him.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
After his first launch.
Yep.
And I'm excited for this one. Just having listened to him on Joe Rogan and some of the other podcasts, he's fucking sharp. Yeah. I felt like when we saw him, that was at the beginning of everything, and
that's the beginning of his recovery. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was very fragmented. Yeah. I felt like he was overwhelmed by, one, I don't think he expected what he was going to see. And 2, I don't know if he had enough time to work through it. So that was that first one.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think he sort of, in that phase was sort of, admitting that he was just kind of finding his bearings again, that, he had, in his estimation, had nearly died several times trying to come off the benzos.
Did they put him in an induced? I think I read that in this book. They put him in like an induced coma in Russia.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think he went to 4 or 5 different countries, worked with all these different specialists, and, all he needed was 1 dose of psychedelics. He would have been fine.
You think?
Oh yeah, for sure. One heroic dose of psilocybin, he would have never needed benzos again. He went through all that crap, but I mean, maybe he did it, but I see that all the time. Like pretty much any kind of addiction gets wiped out with that because it's such a huge reset neurochemically. Like, and it's hard to measure exactly what's going on, but we know there's a ton of changes in neuropeptides.
With the work that you've done with the SEAL Foundation,
neurotransmitters, all
like
that stuff.
Going down and doing the ibogaine.
Ibogaine's the primary one, yeah.
Yeah, and then the DMT, keto DMT?
Yeah, so they're all DMTs. Even ketamine is like a synthetic DMT, essentially. And our brains secrete DMT, and we think that the near-death experience of the universal oneness going towards the light, all that stuff you hear about, we think that's a DMT hyper secretion while you're dying or whatever.
Kind of give you some,
because that's what well over half the people report when they do DMT is something along these lines.
Think about from an evolutionary standpoint that the fact that the DMT would release in like your final moments to kind of give you some comfort that you're connected to something bigger than. Yeah. Now, whether or not it's true or not, I mean, it could be a hallucination.
Yeah. I mean, and you could be, it could be some sort of self-preservation, and, it could be some sort of, other dimensionary sort of communication that we don't know about, right? I mean, I think whatever the physicists have determined there to be about 7 different dimensions, and so we don't know what's going on in the other ones. Maybe that has something. Who knows? Like, who knows what's going on? But that DMT secretion, for the SEALs and for kind of anybody with trauma, whether it's physical, like emotional trauma or physical trauma, psychological trauma, I don't know, however you could categorize all the different ways you could say that, but it tends to pull people away, that universal oneness, that kind of that God experience or death of the egos, to where you can just sit back and go, oh, like that's what I do all the time. Like, you watch yourself run a pattern that you can't recognize as a pattern because you're so bought into it. It's like, well, this is this is the right way to do that. That's the right way to do that. And it's not working for you and you don't realize it. And then you, like, the DMT kind of gives you that capability. But then what we also know is that it decreases amygdala tone by about 90%. And you haven't had amygdala tone that low probably since you were like 4 or 5 years old. I mean, because the world's just way more stressful than that. And the more danger.
So what is that?
So the amygdala is the region of your brain that signals threat or something you should pay attention to, right? So the autonomics, fancy word for automatic nervous system, you aren't in control of, right? It's like there's sympathetic, parasympathetic. Sympathetic is the fight or flight. Parasympathetic is the rest and digest, to be really simplistic about it. And the sympathetic nervous system is basically how much are you going to pay attention to your environment, right? And that's what stress hormones do. Stress hormones get a bad rap because they have the word stress in them, but you need stress hormones to be alive, to be alert. And what cortisol does is keep you alert in proportion to your environment. So if you just slept in a cold, dark cave and had no stimulus, no light, no sound, nothing, and you just slept in a dark room, you would wake up eventually, right? You wouldn't just sleep indefinitely. So why would you sleep? Or why would you wake up? You wake up because your stress hormones get to a certain level. They're the lowest they'll ever be at any 24-hour period during deep sleep. So that first 4 hours of sleep is like the lowest cortisol you'll ever have. And then it gradually climbs up throughout the night. And at some point, it's enough to wake you up. And then that's just enough to have you awake. And so if there's no other stimuli, nothing to worry about, you'd get out of bed and basically have about that level. And then would slowly climb up maybe 10, 20% throughout the day and peak about 3 or 4 p.m. But if a freaking tiger comes into your cave or something that you're sleeping in, then those are going to go through the roof, and that's fight or flight, right? And in our environment, we don't have tigers coming in the room, but we have that text message coming in, that email, that threat of the government, the bankruptcy, the divorce, like whatever people are stressed about, their kids being taught crap at school, anything that people are stressed about, that's just raising that level. And the amygdala is kind of like the central processing of all your senses. So you're like, we see and we hear and we smell and we taste and we feel and all that stuff, but all that has to be processed and meaning has to be made out of it. And then the amygdala is the one who says that's dangerous. Mm-hmm. Like, pay attention to that, right? That uneasy feeling you get, the reason, like you follow movement, like all that stuff is beyond your control. Like, that's not a conscious thought. It's a sympathetic, which is autonomic. Like, there's no control over that. And so you're stressed. And when you're stressed, your prefrontal cortex doesn't work well because your prefrontal cortex shut down in fight or flight. Like in fight or flight, you're superhuman. You can do, right? You're faster, stronger, better reflexes, higher pain threshold, heart rate's up, blood glucose is up. Like, everything about you is better. You're the best version of yourself, but you're eating yourself as the fuel source, so you can't stay there. But the prefrontal cortex shuts down because you don't want to think when you're in that situation. You want to just immediately react. Well, when you live a stressful life, when you have a bunch of brain damage, which causes brain inflammation, which causes stress to the neuroregulatory systems, or you just have threatening things in your life all the time, well, that sympathetic tone is really high. And so if I can shut that amygdala down about 90%, how much better would you be at making decisions? How much better would you be at making changes in yourself? Because you get this experience, you go do this heroic dose of, whatever, psilocybin, ayahuasca, ibogaine, something like that.
They're all kind of a different strain or a different plant, the same thing, correct?
So MDMA, as far as I know, bears no resemblance to DMT. Ketamine is almost identical molecularly to DMT. The primary active ingredient of psilocybin, ayahuasca, and ibogaine is DMT. Then there's 5-MeO-DMT, which is from the resin from the frog kind of sweat. There's another form of DMT, this pure DMT that people mix it with, like marijuana. And then I'm pretty sure that the cactus derived things like peyote and mescaline, like those, I'm pretty sure those things are DMT activated too, but it's not something I've studied a lot.
We interrupt this episode with a shameless self-promotion. Power Athlete delivers battle-tested performance programming for every kind of athlete. So do you want to go from average Joe to MVP? Then dominate with Field Strong. Get stacked and jacked with Jack Street. Hustle in life and still build muscle with Grindstone. Fear no opponent with Dragon Slayer. Be harder than coffin nails with Hammer. Max out minimal equipment with Lean Enable. Or unlock those newbie gains with Bedrock. Get over to powerathletehq.com/training and choose your 7-day free trial right here, right now. Get lifting, get training, get in shape, all while listening to the rest of this show. I've been listening to The Immortality Key. Pretty amazing book. But the guy went back and was able to look at all these kind of early kind of mystic pieces of where like religion came from.
Right.
And there was within the sacraments, whether it be the wine, the host, whatever they were eating. I mean, it's pretty well established, or at least from the guy's research and dealing with the Vatican, that there was some piece for that. But what's interesting is he talks about the exact same thing, that, we go through this idea of, the amygdala and how it works, and it juxtaposed to like what we know, like, okay, if you want me to believe in a God, show me he exists. I can't. Right. You have to have faith. That goes against everything we are as humans. Right. And the people that were the mystics early on were using something that allowed them to access where they weren't just providing faith, but they were seeing it, they were living it, they were being it. Right. And those people were true believers. Right. And now we're an organized religion where they're like, oh, well, you don't have faith. And they belittle you, and something's wrong with you that you don't believe in their imaginary friend. Right. And as he was going through the book, or as I'm reading through the book, it's exactly the problems I had at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old sitting in church as they're talking about this. And how do we know? Right. I mean, like everything about us, we're constantly looking for danger. We're looking for scams and this. And then all of a sudden in this one place with a bunch of strangers we don't really know. Right. With a whole bunch of stuff that we're not familiar with. Now we're supposed to believe here when, some guy walks up the street and says, give me your wallet. He's mugging you. Right. But am I supposed to just give it to him? So pretty interesting that, these religious experiences they believe are fueled by it. And then a lot of these, connectivity where all of a sudden people become kinder, more connected individuals after doing this stuff. This episode of Power Athlete Radio is powered by Train Heroic, the most immersive strength training app experience on the market. We've built an online training business by partnering with Train Heroic to deliver all of our world-class training programs like Jack Street, Hammer, Field Strong, and Grindstone. To learn which Power Athlete training program best suits your goals, head to powerathletehq.com/training. And if you're a coach looking to build a business with the best training tech in the business, head to trainheroic.com/powerathletehq. And now back to the show.
Yeah, I've heard a postulate that the burning bush was actually some sort of psychedelic. Yeah. And so Moses was sitting there inhaling the smoke of this psychedelic and having a God experience. Well, and of course, I don't know if that's true or not.
So the guy that wrote the Immortality Key, he somehow got access to stuff within the Vatican that nobody has access to. Oh yeah,
there's a lot of secret crap in there.
Oh yeah,
whatever.
Oh yeah, and he made friends with these people over like 12 years, and ended up getting like these chalices and this, and like hearing stories and looking at things that other people don't look at. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. The one that kind of struck me was there was a John Hopkins study where I think they were using psilocybin, and these people had no experience with it, and I think they were near death type of people. Right. They brought them in, they gave them heroic doses, and they recorded, this is what I saw, this is what I felt, and their like the recorded kind of experience when he went and he looked at a lot of like the early mystics from what he found in the Vatican were like identical. Right. So, there's an interesting connection for this stuff. And as I talked about it with Justin, it's just kind of been painted as a dirty hippie drugs, Schedule 1, harmful stuff. Whereas now you have this deal where you're like,
And you could look at it the other way, is be like, well, this is something that's put on Earth by either whatever coincidence, if nothing made the Earth, or by the intelligent design that allows you access to this other dimension to see something. Is that real or not? Like I've been under,
and it's obscure stuff. Like,
and I've been under the influence of all of those, and that's not that's not the world I live in. I mean, that's a completely different world, you know.
Well,
it's
like with the ayahuasca, isn't it like a mix of bark and something else? And you're like, how the fuck did these people figure this out?
right. Yeah. I mean, it's strange because you have to do like you have to do the root and then this tree bark, and the tree bark has, what is it? I want to say 5-MeO. It's not right. It has the enzyme that allows you to break down and process the DMT in it, which is it's also the same enzyme. Monoamino oxidase inhibitor. That's what it is. Yeah. So that's why you can't. That's why it's dangerous to be on MAOIs and take psychedelics, because you can.
What's our MAOIs?
It's a monoamino oxidase inhibitor.
What would be?
It's an antidepressant. They're kind of old school antidepressants.
Gotcha.
And it prevents you from breaking down certain neurotransmitters. And then you can go into like a serotonin syndrome with it, which, can kill you. But something that I thought about when you were talking about that earlier is interesting. Not only does the DMT, I guess the best word is reliably, but not 100% of the time, obviously, but it reliably kind of at least contributes to sort of this mystical or godlike or other dimension, supernatural experience. But we've also isolated a gene in the brain, a region of the brain that's associated with religiosity. And the more active that region of your brain is, the more religious you are. And if something
wasn't the CIA research where they were going to try to inoculate?
When I was in residency, I think it was 2005. I went to a presentation where they were like, kind of like the vaccine, kind of like the COVID vaccines. We're trying to do this gene manipulation to shut this region off, and fanatical Muslims, like the people who are out to kill all the infidels, and they were having reasonable success with it.
So you're saying that genetically certain people are more
like
apt to
you have certain like this one region of your brain, and I don't remember where it is, but this one region of your brain is just like hyperactive relative. Like you can literally look at a functional MRI and kind of grade this person, like, but he's super religious, and it doesn't matter what the religion is.
Wow.
Like that guy's super religious, he's moderate religious, he's probably not very religious at all. Like you can just tell by the activity of that region of their brain given certain stimuli, which is actually absolutely fascinating. Because it kind of makes you wonder, like, like there's also this clotho gene in the brain that when that's expressed, you're more intelligent. And Ashkenazi Jews have the highest of that. And I want to say, like, if it's not everybody, it's like 99.9% of all people who have an IQ over 145 are Ashkenazi Jews.
Yeah. And I think Brett Weinstein talks about that.
Yeah.
On his,
so I mean,
it's
podcast. It's like almost everybody,
and they're all physicists,
right?
It was like Einstein,
and they all express this clotho gene, and it's reasonable to suspect. Well, they probably the Orthodox Jewish community probably passed down this religiosity gene as well. I mean, it's part of their culture, so it's hard to say. Because they grow up with their 613 rules to follow every day. And so who knows? But it's fascinating. I mean, nobody's got it figured out. Well, we probably never will, especially since everything's about to collapse and we're about to be cavemen again, I think. So. We'll be starting over. We'll be passing on the chisel and stone tablets instead of doing podcasts in 10 years.
Well, the only thing that makes me nervous is all of our stuff is on these discs and backed up, and it's all basically if you heat it hot enough, everything goes away. So you have all this recorded history; it's just going to disappear. Yeah. At least the ancients were smart enough to encode it in a temple or in a huge pyramid.
Yeah, mosaic or. Yeah, all kinds of much more durable stuff. I guess there'd still be a lot of written word around, but so much garbage out there, you know. It's like there has to be some sort of screening process. You're not just reading garbage, but
I was going to ask you, you know, with the rise of all these kind of internet doctor, kind of healer kind of guys, we were talking about Gary Brecka. Is that how you say his name, Brecka?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Gary Brecka. Which I watched. Somebody sent me a clip the other day about if you get into cold water, it melts body fat off you.
Yeah,
and it's like it's so much hyperbole. Everything's so extreme in this. I mean, the other one we were talking about is, you know, methylation, that somehow, you know,
Right.
most of the planet can't methylate anything.
right.
Which, you know, I know from my blood work, I don't methylate B vitamins very well, so I have to supplement with them. But
Right.
it's probably because I'm burning through a lot of vitamins and just,
Right.
you know, a lot of raw materials.
Right. And there's a huge difference between, you know, surviving as a species that we evolved to
And
survive in, and
human
like
performance.
and human performance, and like optimizing that and saying, you know, like all other animals, we're meant to become less important and less virile over the course, because, you know, there's the young generation that's supposed to be reproducing and fighting and building and accomplishing and all that, and like the elders are kind of supposed to
fade off into
the sunset, and like we're like, well, we don't want to fade off into the sunset. Like, I want to be competitive with those young bucks up until the day I die.
I fucking do it every morning.
And if you're going to do that, then like you're going to have to supplement. You know, like you're going to have to do things that just put you back in that sort of physiologic norm, which, you know, is like how I practice. You know, that's what I do with my clients and patients. It's like, hey, I'm going to make you metabolically, hormonally, physio, like everything I can measure, you're going to look like you're 25, you know, but you're still going to look like you're 50 because you're 50, you know, but like all the studies
Have
I
you
do
found
on you,
a way to somehow get me to be 26 again? Can you give me an injection and turn me to 26?
If I could do that, I'd have all the monies, dude. We just have our own island, and who cares what happened in the world? We'd get about 200 of our friends. We'd move to an island.
And everybody's just 26 forever.
Everybody's 26 forever. Let everything decay. Who cares, man?
So with, you know, I've been fighting to get you back on the podcast, because what I was hoping to do is go through kind of what you do within your concierge deal, and you kind of get a brief overview, but it's very holistic in nature.
Yeah.
You're measuring not only the hormones, but, you know, micronutrients, and just basically trying to fine tune everything from, you know, sleep to lifting weights to training. I mean, it's a really holistic approach.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the whole approach basically is, and it's not how I would sell it to a potential client, but it really is a lifestyle alteration, right? It's like about, I'd say at least 80% of your health is determined by your lifestyle, right? So I can give you a ton of drugs and supplements and pharma and SARMs and SERMs and peptides and whatever. I could throw the kitchen sink at you, but if you're sleeping 3 or 4 hours a night and living off of pizza and not working out or whatever, it's like, all right, you're never going to be optimal.
Is there a hierarchy? Like, you know, I mean, I know you are the sleep doc, but is it, you know, if you were to talk about like an even playing field, is sleep and exercise and food quality on the same
sleep controls everything else. Think about it, right? It's like when I started lecturing on this, my first slide was the 4 pillars of health: sleep, nutrition, exercise, and stress mitigation. And then after about 10 years, I convinced myself, no, it's like it's nutrition, exercise, and stress mitigation, but they sit on the platform of sleep. And the reason I say that is because your fuel partitioning is changed by how you sleep, right? So what the food you eat, how useful is that nutrition? It's determined by how well you sleep. You won't digest everything the same way. Your appetite won't be the same. Your ability to burn fat won't be the same. Your ability to store nutrients won't be the same. Like everything is changed because you didn't sleep well. If you shouldn't be exercising if you're sleep deprived, because when do you get stronger, right? You go to your gym, you work. If you do anything worth doing, you're walking out of your gym weaker than you went into it, right?
Sure.
When are you going to get stronger? You get stronger while you sleep. So if you're not sleeping enough, well, you're not getting stronger. Why are you going to go work out, right? It's like you haven't recovered from yesterday. You're going to beat yourself up against today and not sleep well, right? And the same thing with stress mitigation. I mean, the whole idea of stress mitigation is like, I'm going to learn some techniques. I'm going to learn some mindfulness, some breath work, learn how to meditate, whatever. I'm going to do some things to lower my cortisol levels during the day. Well, it takes 8 hours to recover from being awake for 16 hours. That's just the way it is. You don't get to put butter in your coffee and change that, or get an ice bath and change. Like, that's the way it is. 8 hours for 16 hours. That's what it takes. If you sleep 6 hours instead of 8 hours, you still have to do everything tomorrow. You still have to do the exact same things tomorrow that you had to do if you would have slept 8 hours, but you're not prepared. So where do you get the resources? You release stress hormones. We already talked about when you're in fight or flight, you're superhuman, right? If you could think about, if you had any self-awareness about how you felt, you'd be like, man, I feel amazing. I feel strong and powerful and virile, right? Mm-hmm. So if I wake up and I'm deficient, like the whole reason I'm going to sleep tonight is to repair everything I've done to my body. Sure. And then to prepare for tomorrow, using today as the template of what I need to be better at tomorrow. And if I could repair and prepare 100%, I would wake up tomorrow unchanged or slightly better. I would never age. I would be exactly the same every day if I could wake up. I can't. When I'm younger, I can. When I'm younger, I can wake up bigger, better, faster, stronger, and smarter. About 25 to 35 is kind of a plateau. After that, I'm waking up 99 point something percent, but not 100% every day, and that's my aging. Well, if I choose to sleep 2 hours less, I'm choosing to age 25% faster, but I'm also choosing to go into tomorrow with 25% fewer resources. And so my body's going to compensate by secreting stress hormones because, like I said, stress hormones keep you alert in proportion to your environment. If your body's really ready for the day, you don't need a lot of stress hormones. If you're deficient in nutrients, deficient in substrates that have been stored, biochemical reactions, whatever, your body's not quite ready for it. Well, it compensates by increasing the stress hormones. That impairs my prefrontal cortex. It affects my ability to communicate. It affects my perception of the world. It affects my choices, my problem solving skills, all this other stuff, my appetite, my motivation, my willpower, like all of that's affected now. I've chosen to make myself deficient. So if you're doing stress mitigating activities during that day, you're just trying to get that back down to like where you would have been if you
just slept 8 hours.
Yeah. And now if you sleep 8 hours and you do that, well, now you can be less catabolic during the day. Essentially, I mean, this is an oversimplification because two things are always going on at the same time, but essentially where you're awake, it's catabolic. And when you're asleep, it's metabolic or anabolic.
Anabolic. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I know for me with my sleep, I get probably around 7 hours.
Yeah.
But I'm in bed for like almost 8.
Right.
And I think there's 30, 40 minutes.
That's what it is. It's like 8 hours in bed is what I tell people. Yeah. Yeah. If you sleep all 8 hours, great.
I can do it on occasion.
Yeah.
But it's usually like 6:53, 7:01. It's right around 7 hours. And what's wild is, and I started really tracking this. Like, let's say I go to bed at like 9:30. From like 9:30 to midnight is when I get all my deep sleep. And if I go to bed at like midnight, I only get a little bit of deep sleep, and then I get right into it. So I feel like for me that like 9:30 to about 12:30 is like where I get all my deep sleep. Yeah. And that's where I'll get everything.
Yeah. And that's the way it breaks down on a histogram, which is like when we combine all the data from a sleep study, right? So you're looking at your brain waves and your respiratory rate and how much you're moving, your eyelids moving, and O2 saturation, your blood, your brain waves, all that stuff. And we combine them onto like this histogram, which is just a graph of what stage of sleep you're in. The first sleep cycle, which is 90 to 120 minutes, is almost it's like 90% deep sleep. Yeah. And then the next one's about 70. And then progressively through the night, it's more and more REM, less and less deep. And deep is that anabolic period. REM is primarily working on your brain and emotions and learning and pruning useless information, emotional categorization of things, rehearsing everything you've learned, attaching that to old information so that you can work with that more fluidly. So when you go to bed, when you should, 2 to 3 hours after the sun goes down, kind of in general, is how we're wired. You go to bed consistently, say around 10 o'clock. If you got up at 4, you're losing REM. If you go to bed at midnight and get up at 6, you're most likely going to get rid of deep. And that's if you're consistently on schedule and then you go off the schedule. Yeah. If you consistently go to bed at midnight,
it ends up working.
Then it could line up better, and and who knows what you're doing there. But chaotic sleep is the worst.
Consistency. The other one is alcohol for me. If I have a drink, all of a sudden my deep sleep is fucked.
Yeah.
REM is fine. For some reason, alcohol doesn't affect my REM. But like all of a sudden, if I'm pretty consistent about an hour 30, hour 45 of deep and about an hour 30, hour 45 of REM, I get about 3 hours total. But it's wild. If I have like a drink or even multiple drinks, all of a sudden you can it'll be like 43 minutes, 27 minutes. It just goes off the scales.
Heart rate goes up.
Yep.
Stress hormones go up.
Breathing increases.
Right. So we know this. Research has borne out that alcohol, if you use alcohol as a sleep aid, it will diminish REM sleep by up to 80%.
Oh, wow.
And then diminishes, deep sleep by about 80% and REM sleep up to 20%. Sleep drugs do exactly the opposite. So when you see somebody who's taking Ambien with alcohol, which
sounds like a party.
I saw all the time in the SEAL teams, right?
What's the weirdest thing you saw happen with alcohol and Ambien? I have a good story about it, but
well, I had probably one of the most interesting stories is when I coached Cole's football. One of the players' moms that came to practice quite a bit was a nurse, and she knew that I did sleep stuff, and so she came and talked to me, and she said that she called the cops at her house. So she was divorced, and her kids were at the dad's house, and so she's like, I'm gonna sleep in, and so she takes her Ambien, and then she wakes up the next day and she goes downstairs, and her house has been ransacked. Right, it's like there's food wrappers all over the place. The kitchen's a mess, like furniture's overturned. And she's like, what the hell? So she runs back upstairs and calls the cops, and the cops come and search her house, whatever. And it was her. Like, she had taken Ambien, and then she went down there and was like eating ramen and cupcakes and like, but kind of out of it. So she's like knocking stuff over her and stuff like that. But I've had conversations with people while they were on Ambien, and then talk to them the next day about that conversation, and they have zero recollection of it. It's like an hour and a half long conversation. I'm sitting there going, you don't remember anything? Not a thing. Not a word of what I'm talking about sounds familiar. Nope. I'm like, wow, that's a mess. And the military thought, that it was a completely benign drug because that's what the pharmaceutical industry told them. Because
the pharmaceutical industry never lies.
No, they're upstanding moral pillars, the benzos killed people because it suppressed breathing. When you overdosed on those, the Ambien won't kill you, but it's a dissociative. So it's like going under anesthesia. It's like, were you dead? Were you still alive under anesthesia? If you've ever seen anybody do conscious sedation, they'll talk to you the whole time they're in a conscious sedation, and they have zero recollection of that whatsoever too, right? And so it's kind of that same thing. It's a dissociative drug. And so once they got sued and all the data came out, on average, it only made you fall asleep 13 minutes faster. You slept for 37 minutes longer, but you diminished REM sleep by 80% and deep sleep by 20%. And SEALs, they came home and had 3 or 4 beers or a couple of cocktails and took their Ambien. So now they had no deep sleep and no REM sleep because it was 80-20 and 20-80. And I would send them into a sleep study, 99.999% stage 2 sleep. There'd be no REM, no deep sleep. And when you know a lot about sleep, I don't even know how they survived that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Like, how are you still surviving?
Well, they've
been doing it for years.
You hit me with a pretty good one, which I had never thought about, which is if you don't sleep, you don't produce hormones.
Right.
So I know we were discussing blood work of a friend who doesn't sleep, and his body was producing 0 hormones.
Right.
And yet he was still walking around, going to work and living a normal life.
Yeah.
Tired and feeling like shit, but like 0 hormones. You're like, dude, I know 80-year-old men that produce more hormone than this.
I had a new SEAL client who's retired SEAL, a former SEAL. I want to say he's about 32 years old. He had a total testosterone of 126, a free testosterone of 3, which I didn't know they could measure that low. Vitamin D of 6 or 6 or 7 or something he just had no hormones. His thyroid was still functioning normal, which is weird as hell. I've never seen that before. I'm like, all right, whatever.
He's like, I feel a little tired.
Yeah. And he's like, man, my motivation just sucks. I just really can't, I'm going to the gym, but I really can't get myself to get after it anymore. I'm like, I'm amazed you're going to the gym.
I'm amazed you're breathing.
I'm like, it's really surprising. And like even his AM cortisol was almost unmeasurable. He went, got his labs at 8:00 in the morning and had an AM cortisol like 4 or 5 or something. And I'm just like, But with the SEALs too, you're dealing with a lot of
discipline.
well, you're dealing with a lot of brain damage, right? And you can get pan-hypopituitarism. So like your pituitary itself can just be secreting minuscule amounts of everything, and then that's what you get this whole picture of. And then there's this other problem that's been presenting itself quite recently. Well, it's been presenting itself for the whole time I've been doing this, but it seems to be more common recently. All I can figure is that they don't have androgen receptors, and I don't know what to do about that. Like I've
you mean
been
the
studying.
androgen receptors are bound, or are they just non-existent?
Well, so,
just hypothetically, like if somebody had no androgen receptors and you were to give them androgens like testosterone,
it does nothing.
It does nothing.
Right. So like this one guy gave. He was older. I mean, like he was in his 40s. And we were going to stay on a pretty conservative track, but I was just going to start him off with like two months worth of hormone replacement, and then just taper him off and like keep him on a trajectory to be able to produce his own. And you know me, I don't give a ton of testosterone. It's like I'm giving like maybe 120 milligrams a week, and it's like kind of 80 to 120 depending on how it falls in that week. And he came back with a total testosterone of like 3,500, and the free testosterone of like, out of a scale of 26, he was like 250 or something like that. I was like, how much testosterone are you taking? He's like, what you told me to take. And I was like, okay.
Wait, so he was
so he
3,500?
Yeah, he didn't metabolize testosterone at all. He's like, I don't feel any different. I don't feel any better. I'm not sleeping any
So
better.
the numbers were through the roof.
So like 100% of the testosterone he's putting in his body was staying in his bloodstream and not being metabolized.
Wow.
And I've seen that to various degrees. Like he was by far the most severe I've ever seen.
What was his estradiol?
I don't remember, but it
So
wasn't super high.
So like none of it was converting to estrogen?
No, he was staying at testosterone. He was staying with a really high testosterone, really high free. And I tested this after a month. So sex hormone binding globulin hadn't really had enough time to climb up a whole lot. I can't remember if his estradiol was high. It probably was. I mean, with 25 or 3,500, whatever his total was. What showed up in his labs initially was LH not measurable, FSH not measurable, TSH not measurable. And so I was like, well, I don't know if this is just brain, neuroinflammation, everything's being squeezed down and we can move this or not. And so, of course, when I was treating him, I was stimulating his luteinizing hormone and thyroid and all that stuff. And I was trying to ramp him up, and nothing changed. Like none of his pro-hormones, none of his precursors increased either. He has pan-hypopituitarism, and he has a history of some really significant TBIs. One was a vehicle wreck, which is really common for damaging the pituitary stalk, and then the pituitary just kind of quits working. So
is that like for like frontal hit?
It could be front or back, just because that the pituitary stalk just comes through this little hole, and then it's like sitting on that saddle, and it can move. And so if with enough force, you can push it. Happens with women in pregnancy, they get inflammation and they bear down so hard, and you just compress that stalk enough. It has like little, fiber optics, like little channels through there, whatever, that can be crushed and can never work again. And so I'd seen that plenty of times, but I'd never seen anybody that when I gave them the hormones, they didn't respond to them. Right. So
lack of receptors.
Yeah, so all I can think is, well, he's not metabolizing it. He can't possibly have the receptors for it, right? So,
would that be a genetic thing?
I don't know. I haven't been able to figure it out yet. So if anybody's listening and have any ideas, hopefully they'll let you know. But I've been digging for a long time, because, like I said, every time I've seen pan-hypopituitarism, they still respond to the hormones. They oftentimes they don't respond as well as you would expect. And that's what I said. I've been seeing that forever, but this guy just zero response. And so he just quit taking everything. He's like, I don't feel any better. I mean, and I was like, I can't argue with you. I mean, I think you'll probably be better having the hormones in you, but like, it's up to you. Like I'm just recommending things, It's like, I don't dictate what people do. So I gave him my advice, and he's not doing it at all anymore.
Obviously being an ex-NFL player, head trauma is something that's near and dear to my heart. So I probably have 70,000 concussions based upon the way they define concussions today. Similar when I went to Mid-South with the guys from NSW, and I remember we were walking out to the range, and they were basically in the kill house blowing doors and setting charges. We walked by right as they detonated a charge. Yeah. And I want to think, it was the percussion and the explosion and like the feeling. I jumped like 10 feet. I was like, holy shit. Yeah. And they were like, yeah, that's a quarter blast. Yeah. They're like, when we put a full charge on there, like it's fucking ring your ears for a month. And those guys were blowing those through. So what was when we got out to the range, the guys asked me, is the feeling that you felt of that explosion similar to the hits that you took in the NFL? And I was like, it's very different. Yeah. That was like ours were, violent contact, but the percussion of that, like I felt it in my head. Like I felt that through my entire body. Like it fucking, like the shock wave went through my body. Like, you see the Fantastic Four and they got hit with the thing and it like went through and they sucked their souls out. That's how I felt. Yeah. Whereas I never felt that in the NFL. Like I felt the collisions and the impacts and all the deals that we went through, but it was a very different feeling. And the amount of TBIs, and I wonder if like the violent nature of those explosions is very different than two helmets colliding.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the sequelae of those TBIs have been very common in both of our communities, or consistent across both of our communities, is suicide. And just like NFL players, SEALs knew that there was something wrong with their brains, and so they started shooting themselves through the heart.
With notes, hey, have them look at my brain.
Look at my brain. Larkin was the first one. His father was a SEAL with me, and he, I can't remember. I want to say 2012-ish or something. Maybe he suicided. Maybe
about
a little
the same
later.
Time as Junior SEAL.
And so he shot himself through the chest. Wanted his his brain autopsied. Yeah, he was an 18 Delta trauma corpsman, so he understood the medical component of it, and he understood there's something off with him. And the Western care doesn't work. There's no more plain way to say it. It just simply doesn't work.
You mean there's no pharmaceuticals?
There's no pharmaceuticals that work. None. Zero. They don't work. Period. I've watched this for 20 years now. It doesn't work. It does not work. There's no help in the psychiatric field. There's a little bit of help in psychology with a good CBT practitioner, like somebody who can change the way you frame things. Maybe you can get some help there. The psychedelics,
game changers,
100 magnitudes more powerful than anything else we have.
I still go with hyperbarics.
Hyperbarics is great too, but hyperbarics is a long window.
Yeah.
Right. So when somebody's about to start their pistol, you put them, you send them to Ibogaine, right?
Why is the Ibogaine? I know the general idea of ayahuasca being the mother and Ibogaine being the father, and they kind of have these terms for it. But the Ibogaine comes from a plant in Mexico, correct?
No, Ibogaine's African. Yeah.
Whereas the ayahuasca is from the rainforest, and then the
Amazonish,
mescaline,
Peru kind of stuff. Yeah.
The mescaline would be like the San Pedro cactus.
Yeah.
So these are all this similar
psilocybin,
substance.
I think, is kind of ubiquitous.
Universal.
Yeah.
But these are similar kind of.
Yeah. Like the DMT
is the effect.
Seems to be the effect. The reason SEALs go for the Ibogaine is because it's the hardest one, right? It's the one we initiated with, right? So, I took the first SEAL down to get treated. Yeah. And he was just a dear friend of mine, and he'd been through Western care for 8 or 9 years, and nothing was helping, and he was matter-of-factly suicidal with no emotions about it. And
all they start doing is just giving you, this is the same thing that Kyle Turley went through. They just kept giving him more and more meds, and every time he would come back, there'd be another med.
Right.
Next thing you know, you're on 14 of them, you're feeling suicidal, and the guy's like, we just need to fine-tune the meds.
Yeah.
We're giving you this, and they just are like trying to like find the right recipe.
Yeah, these make you piss yourself. These make you shoot yourself. We give you, it's like,
the doctor described it to him as an EQ, like trying to tune for music.
Yeah.
You just got to figure out what the right knobs are to turn.
Right, yeah, it doesn't work.
And I'm like, shit.
And so, what we were getting into, so the blast injuries versus the contact. So CTEs, that term that they deemed for the NFL is basically, it's like, okay, you hit your helmet here, your brain hits there, your brain goes back and hits that. So you kind of here, there, or maybe here and there. And so you kind of have like this distinct pattern of like chronically inflamed or dead neurological tissue.
Yeah, and then that tau forms.
Yeah, and then your body,
like the cobwebs.
That those beta amyloid and tau proteins, those are kind of like protection against inflammation. So atherosclerosis, right? Atherosclerosis is an inflammatory disease. I don't think it has anything to do with cholesterol personally. It's an inflammatory disease. And when your body gets tired of fighting and inflammation, it just walls it off. It puts calcium over it and just like put a brick wall there. We're tired of fighting that. And that takes care of it. Well, tau proteins, beta amyloid proteins are kind of the same thing in the brain. It's like chronically inflamed, just wall it off. Like, let's quit messing with this. And so, like I said, in NFL, pugilists, whatever, you can see these patterns where what they did with the SEALs, and this was done after Larkin's autopsy, because they're trying to figure out what the hell this pattern could. So they made a skull that was completely transparent, with about the same density as bone, the plastic.
Like those bodies that have like the killing foam, where they show like the
yeah. And then they made the brain with every layer. So they made a dura layer, they made blood vessels, they made gray matter, they made white matter, they had the vesicles in there, they had fluid in there. And then with high speed photography or low speed, whichever, I can't remember how to guess, but the one you can slow down, super slow.
It's high speed. And they turn it down.
So they do the blast, and then they watch the blast wave go through the brain, right? And so you can see it, and it's really cool. And there's not a whole lot of room for movement, but you can see it move, just like when you've seen a video of a blast.
Dude, I felt this blast. Yeah, it was weird. It was like a wave of energy going through me.
You see dust fly, and you see trash fly, and you see trees wave, and you see cars sway, but everything's moving at a different rate. Well, the same thing happens with this. So the different densities of your brain move at a different rate. So the durasec moves at a different rate than the blood vessels underneath it. Those blood vessels move different rate than the gray matter they're communicating with. That moves at a different matter than the white matter underneath that. That moves at a different matter than the vesicles beneath that. And so every time they move at a different rate, they shear. And so it tears it apart, little micros. And that blast injury that you're talking about is significant. But in JAMA 2008, 2009, August of 2008 or 9, I can't remember which, JAMA published an article, several thousand people. They'd studied, there's this imaging called DTI, and they can see a single neuronal tract break. And it's like the most minor TBI you could possibly get. There's no way you could perceive that, but it's like, okay, we'll call that a minor TBI. And that was at 1.09 Gs. They got that from the acceleration changes on a roller coaster. And so if you extrapolate that out to blast force, if we were inside of this room right now, because your walls are so dense and we're shooting M4s, every bullet's 35 Gs. Not to mention the blast that we opened the door with, the Carl Gustav, 200 Gs for the guy shooting it, 300 Gs for the guy spotting it, 50 cal in the back of a Humvee, 65 Gs every round. Our fast boats transit at 60 Gs, peak over 100 Gs. That's actual force, not blast.
Yeah, because
right. Yeah. So, to your point, just like the NFL, thousands and thousands and thousands of brain injuries, and we keep coming up with this more and more amazing protective equipment, but we're wrapping it around a marshmallow. The thing inside is still getting damaged. It's surviving it.
I'm still shocked that evolutionary our brains are this delicate to these. I mean, I know we didn't evolve with these things, but you had to think that falling, trauma, fighting, punching.
I think when you fell off of cliffs, you died.
Yeah, but I mean, think about the amount of. I'm trying to think like, okay, so 2 million years ago, some other dude socked a guy in the face, and we've been punching each other in the face for the last 2 million years, and our skulls and our brains haven't evolved with everything else.
Well, no, I mean, there's a physiologic max, right? I mean. You could make the same argument for our bones shouldn't break if we do things that we commonly do. Like, you keep in mind, I mean, for the vast majority of evolution, you died because of trauma or because you fell prey to another tribe, another clan, or an animal.
Yeah,
something ate you or just killed you, tore you up, poisoned you, you got bitten by a snake, whatever. So, if you think about, you look at UFC fighters. I mean, they're in their 20s. They get punched in the face 10,000 times a day. They don't care. Like, they're fine. Like, they run around. Like,
I don't know. I've seen Sean Strickland talk recently, and he's all fucked up.
As they get older, it catches up with them. But when they're young, it's like, it's not that big of a deal. But just like, as we get older, and that's kind of the focus of my practice. It's like, if you can handle it at 25, why? Why can you handle it at 25? You can't handle it at 55. Why? Things have changed, right? It's like hormones have changed.
Yeah,
like, inflammation has changed. The amount of damage, the tau protein, the beta amyloid, like all that's built up. Because to me, all aging is have fewer resources.
Yeah.
I'm less capable of handling trauma. I'm less capable of handling infection and whatever. So I'm more likely to die from any cause, and I'm more likely to get any disease because I don't repair as fast. I'm not as metabolically active. I don't have as much muscle mass. I'm not like whatever. My hormones aren't the same. My blood flow is not the same. All of the billions of neurochemicals in my bodies have shifted. And so what I try to do in my practice is like, well, everything I can measure and I can affect, let's keep that about a 25-year-old level for you. And as we can measure more things and affect more things, I just keep adding things in my toolbox, right? Yeah. And the fun thing, the fascinating thing about my job is that there's new stuff every day. Like every single day, there's like some new test.
No, it's crazy.
Some new supplement. And
I don't see you for like 2 weeks, and you're like, everything's changed. I got all this new stuff.
The whole stuff, everything in the world's dead.
Everything we knew 2 weeks ago is over.
Yeah, it's gone, and it's really fascinating. And I think probably like I'm not smart enough, and it's not going to be around. Like I'm not going to be around long enough to like really figure it out. But as long as we don't kill ourselves as a species in like the next 50 years. I mean, maybe 20, 25 years. I think we have a real shot
at basically cracking this code on aging.
I don't know about, this idea of super longevity. Maybe not. But
I don't know if I want to live to be 150 years old.
So without the neuroplasticity, it would suck, right?
Yeah.
So the neuroplasticity is key, and that's what the psychedelics are good at. That's what H-spot's good at. There's some peptides that are good at that.
Lifting weights, learning new things, juggling, just not being a fucking curmudgeon.
And the older we get, the harder it is to change our brains because neuroplasticity, right? And that's what makes me a grumpy old man, right? I'm not grumpy because I'm 53. I'm grumpy because my brain's set. It's like, this is the way you do things.
Do you feel like the psilocybin and like the psychedelics are
those things help a lot, for sure. Even microdosing helps with that. I don't know how much that affects durable changes, but I can tell you, actually, the harshest psychedelic I did was ayahuasca. That was horrible.
Tell me about it.
Horrible.
Tell me about it. Because everybody else I've talked to tells me it was life-changing. It was the most amazing experience. They connected with, they sat with Mother Ayahuasca, and they're a part of this universe. I've listened to all this stuff. You're the only person I know that's like, it was fucking terrible.
It was terrible. The one that was supposed to be terrible, Ibogaine, was no big deal for me at all. And psilocybin was amazing.
Why was, what was wrong? Do you think it was the environment of the ayahuasca?
I think so. So one thing, I was naive to every drug in the world. I'd never, I think I'd smoked pot once in high school, like a freshman in high school, I smoked pot once. Like that was it. That was my drug experience. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I went in there with the kind of a weird social crowd here in Austin that you know very well. Who aren't really my people. So
when you invited me into it, I was like, Doc, these aren't our people. You're like, where are you going? Why are you leaving? I'm like, I'm trying to get the fuck out of here. Get in the car. We're getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah. I'm just like, these aren't my people.
These aren't the drones we're looking for.
These are not the drones I'm looking for. So I think that was a factor. Because like when you're sitting there with a bunch of shamanistic woo-woo people, and I'm not shitting on people's belief systems, but that's just not me. Like I don't think that way. It's like I'm very, I'm very logical and empirical. It's like I want to know why. I want to like,
and you're not full of shit. Like that's what's like. I think I was making a joke the other day about like all these people on the internet that are the Gary Breckers and all these like it's not you. Like you're like me. Like you could get up there and bullshit people.
I could make a lot of money if I could bullshit like that, but
I just can't. That's what Rob Wolf tells us. He's like, I wish we were better liars.
I just can't do it, man. I'm just like, that's not true. It's like, yes. So when I did the ayahuasca, I was with a bunch of people that saw the world completely differently than I did. I didn't feel like this was a safe evolution, right? Because I'm about to lose my mind, right? And I still have, the retro idea of people kill themselves on this, run through plate glass windows, like whatever. So, and I'm in there going, a bunch of little skinny hippies, like, what if I do flip out? What are they going to do about it? Like, if I start throwing people through the walls, what are they going to do? Like, I don't know. And then I just assumed that there would be experienced, sober people in the room.
Oh yeah, like shamans or guides,
right? And the shamans are getting high too. Like the shamans are doing the drug, and all their helpers. I'm like, everybody's stoned in here. Like, this ain't cool. Like, what? And they give you these warnings, and they're BS. But I didn't know they were BS at the time. It's like, oh, you got to have your head at this end and your feet at this end, because the mantle's over here and the energy flows that way. And if you roll on your side, and so like people are rolling on their side, and I'm like, hey, like why aren't y'all doing anything? And they're like, but don't interact with anybody else and don't talk to other people. And so I'm not a great rule follower, but when I'm in an environment where I don't know what I'm doing, and like I've been trained,
there's a lot of SOPs,
right? It's like skydiving. Skydiving was scary. I did exactly what I was taught to do until I became really comfortable with it. And then I'm like, I'm not really going to do it. Like, that part's not important. But until I really know what I'm doing, like, I'm going to follow the rules, because that's right. That's how you know what you're doing. And first of all, like, so that was a bust. But the first thing was I was super sensitive to it. And I don't know if it's because I'd never taken drugs before, but like I was tripping out. So
they give you like a thimble fill.
You go up to what they call the mantles, like a bunch of voodoo stuff, chicken bones and crosses and crystals and stuff. And you go up and they pour you your cup, and you
how's it taste?
Terrible. Dirt and oil kind of taste. And then we have a yoga mat. It's just you're laying on, and it's like maybe from here to that wall away from me. So I take my drink and I go there, and they say, hey, you're gonna lay down there, and you'll slowly start feeling this come on. You should be pretty well into this about 45 minutes to an hour. At about 45 minutes to an hour, we'll ask anybody if they want seconds, and if you really don't feel anything, you should come up and have seconds, because you're just probably not that sensitive to it. By the time I got back to my mat and closed my eyes, I was tripping out. Like the second I closed my eyes, I was like, whoa. I saw the black light poster stuff that from high school, like the hippies had, those little geometric shapes. I'm like, oh, that's where that comes from. Like, this is exactly what those posters look like. So I lay down, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm tripping out already. How is this possible? Like, I mean, it's been less than a minute before I'm laying down there. And then within 2 minutes, I was completely paralyzed. I was completely lost my body. My body had disappeared. And I was just, all I could think was too much, too much, too much, too much. Like, oh my God, too much. And then I start seeing these patterns of like nonsensical stuff, like picture of a hammer, a washing machine, my mother, a commercial, like it just, but it's like 300 times per second. It was like watching a television screen just flipping that fast. And I was just going, what the hell am I going to do with this? Like, what am I learning? What is this? And my brain was racing so fast. And anyway, and then I would go into these completely dissociative, just weird worlds without words you can't really describe, just 100% emotion, feeling, and weird. And you come back into that, and you're just like this oscillating up and down and up and down. And I was like, Jesus Christ. And you lose all sense of time, right? And I'm just like going, man, this is exhausting. Like, I hope this is almost over.
And it's 4 minutes in.
And then I hear him go, anybody want seconds? And I'm like, oh, shit. Oh, my God. And that was the whole night for me. I mean, that whole night was just like, I can think of, you remember when they used to do cartoons on cards and they'd flip so fast that it looked like it was like that was the experience to me, but it wasn't something consistent. It was just like a different picture each time, and it just went super fast. And you kind of go, and there's like waves where you kind of become more grounded and more back in reality, and you can think, and you can like say, oh, I'm going to open my eyes and look around or something, or like, do some experiments. Like that's what I would do, at least. Like, can I control this? So like, what if I do this? What if I pull my leg hairs? What if I, like, I don't know, like I just trying to play around with it. And it just, it's just unrelenting. Like when you're going out, like you're going out, there's nothing you're going to do. Like when you're going to dissociate, like you're just going to dissociate. And I tried to think of things because I'm going into just going, well, maybe I have some stuff to deal with that I don't know about. Right. Because I don't really feel like I have anything to deal with. Like I'm a pretty happy dude. Like I don't really think I'm subject to depression or pessimistic, nihilistic thoughts or whatever. So I'm just like, I don't know. Like, let's see. And I know there's some really bad crap that happened in my life and some things I probably haven't processed. And I couldn't think of them. Like I'd be like, show me this. Like I want to think about this. I want to see if there's anything there. And I couldn't get there. I had no control. And that's the whole idea. You're supposed to let go, like let go, surrender. And I was like, I'm surrendered. Like, I'm not like, I'm not fighting. Like, let's go, like, show me something. It was just super frustrating, but it was like so much information and so fast. And then I went back to my room and I just talked in my phone. I just did a voice memo and I just talked for like 15 minutes, everything I could possibly think to say. And the next night was about the same thing.
So you did it 2 nights in a row?
3 nights in a row.
Why?
And then the third night comes around and I'm over it, man. Like I have zero interest in doing this again. I'm like, all right, whatever. But kind of peer pressure. Like I'd signed up for the weekend.
Why did they do it 3 nights in a row?
I don't know. It's just kind of one of those shaman ritualistic things. So there's all sorts of shamanistic things to these medications or whatever you want to call them, sacraments, medications, whatever, drugs. There's a lot of ritualization around it. I was really investigating that because I wanted to see it would be an alternative for
Ibogaine?
The Ibogaine for the seals. Because Ibogaine can be dangerous, especially if you're on a lot of medications, if you're drinking a lot or whatever. And obviously we're putting people through there who aren't in a good place, who may not, we don't have time to clean up and get them off of drugs. So I thought, but it was so ritualized and there's so much chicken bones and shaking and rattles.
Did you have
and
to like, get up and dance?
I was like, man, if I put,
were you doing 10, like your interpretive dance?
Yeah. I was like, if I put 10 seals in here, that dude would be Riggish taped up in the corner, with that gong handle sticking out of his butt. I'm like, so that was kind of my main reason for doing it. And by the third night, I was just like, I'm over it, but I'm going to do it because I said I was going to do it. And I came here as a group and I just like kind of took it and laid there just like grumpily. And I just tried to experiment, like see if I could count time and see if I could stop myself from going in.
Did same thing. It hit you immediately.
Hit me immediately. Yeah.
Did you have the same experience 3 nights in a row?
The second night was a little bit better. There was a period of it where it was just kind of like very urethral. Like there's just like,
do you think there's different like strains or brews?
Yeah, so I mean that's one of the plants.
I've been to some restaurants and some bars that pour you a great drink, and I've been to some other ones that taste like battery acid.
Right.
And you order 2 old
They're
fashions.
using the same liquor, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, how are you making this so different?
Yeah.
Right? I'm ordering the same liquor out of the same manufacturer that I know is consistent because I have it at my house or whatever, and it's terrible. And so like it depends. Like they got to get the ratios right. It's how long do they boil it? It's how fresh is it? I guess like when did they make it? When did you get it? Like usually when you get ayahuasca here, it comes from Hawaii. So how long did it take? And it comes in like a big freaking 16-ounce water bottle or 20-ounce water, like plastic water bottle. It's like how much of that's. How hot is this thing got? Like how much
leaching BPAs.
Like how much BPAs am I getting through my system? How much of it's been degraded by sunlight? Like, so there's no dosing that. Whereas the Ibogaine they've reduced to a salt and they can weigh out. And I think the Ibogaine falls off at higher body weights though, because they calculate that with your body weight. And every guy who's like my size ish or bigger, all feel like they get underdosed. I feel like I got underdosed. One of my buddies I went through buds with, he's probably, 10, 15 pounds lighter than me. And he did it twice and felt like he got nothing out of it. And he's like, I want the dose you give to heroin addicts. And then they gave him that. And then he had the same experience that everybody else did. But then there's some other dudes who are like pretty good sized guys, 220, 230, who they do the standard dose and they puke for 36 hours and they're out completely gone for a day and a half. And I basically watched, it's like I was watching television on an iPhone across the room. Couldn't really understand it. Couldn't just kind of that same thing, like flipping channels. couldn't really tell who it was or what they were saying. I was just like kind of trying to watch that and pay attention to it, and just got bored with it and fell asleep. So it lasted about 4 hours for me, and not much of it. Maybe
just metabolize it quickly. I mean, because if it's quick in the front door, it's gonna be quick in the back door too.
Yeah, and that might be it. And when I did psilocybin, that was like I had some really amazing, like profound experiences with that. But I also came out of it way faster than everybody else. So it might just be a metabolic rate, like however my brain processes it. So whatever enzymes.
Maybe it's a survival instinct.
Could be.
It
could be. So I think when I did psilocybin, most people were. It was like solid 6 hours to kind of 7 hours that most people took to kind of process it all. We did that 2 nights, and first night I was done in 4 hours. Second night I was done in 3 hours.
Wow!
But when they come by and ask you if you want seconds, like there's no way I want seconds, because like I'm orbiting Saturn when they come and ask me if I want seconds. Like I'm so far
on the psilocybin, you mean?
Yeah, I was just like, there's no way. Like, you kidding me? Couldn't imagine being more dissociated than I am right now.
No, I remember, reading through Paul Stamets' book and all that stuff. I mean, they were talking about different heroic doses and this, and somewhere around that 5 grams.
Yeah.
And Matt Vincent posted something about taking like 9 grams. And I was reading the stories about people on 5 grams, and I'm like, oh my God, 9 grams. But he's well skilled in that, and he's not new to it. So I bet you there is something where if this is something you regularly do, it's probably a dose related thing. It's kind of like alcohol, maybe.
Yeah.
You
definitely have to build up enzymes to break things down. Yeah. Like the more you expose your body to it, your body's going to figure out a way to process it.
I'm a terrible drinker. I'm like 1 or 2 drinks, I'm smashed. I just don't drink enough alcohol.
Right.
And I've been out with, guys like, some of the SEAL guys or even NFL players, and if I can drink a bottle of booze and be fine. Yeah. I think it comes down to a skill, which I'm totally fine to be a lightweight. Yeah. I'm the cheapest date on the planet.
I'm the same way. When I was young and like a SEAL, kind of that age in the 20s, like
it's cool.
I couldn't get drunk. Like I couldn't get drunk off of beer. Like I could drink as much as I could possibly tolerate to drink, and it didn't make me drunk. I'd need like liquor to get drunk. And now I'm the same as you. It's like sometimes I get like 1 margarita, I'm halfway through it. I'm like, geez, right. Like, that's enough for the day.
You're like, who's pouring these things? Heavy hands?
I mean, my eyes are starting to cross. I'm like, my goodness. I actually did that with a Coors Light not too long ago. When I went to San Jose for that podcast, I hadn't had a drop of liquor since my wedding. And I had a Coors Light in the airport just because I hate the whole experience of being in an airport and flying and all that crap. And I'm just like, oh, maybe settle my nerves a little. And I was loopy. I mean, by the time I walked down to my gate, I was like, wow, like I can't drink at all anymore. Yeah. But my father's an alcoholic. So like the son of an alcoholic, the son of a male alcoholic, it's like you can almost guarantee that you have twice the amount of alcohol dehydrogenase as most people. It's something that's
only
if you don't ever use it. Yeah, it's only male to male. Yeah.
What about like my wife's father was had a problem with drinking? Always wondered about.
Yeah, it can go to the daughter. But it almost always goes to the son. Like
Kate's ability to metabolize alcohol is almost zero. She's like, have 1 drink, ooh, and we used to joke that like there'd be like a guy go,
yeah.
And all of a sudden,
you've got a dart in your neck,
dude. Seriously, we would go out and like Kate would have a drink, and my brother would like look over and he'd be like, "Dude, did Kate just get ninja blow darted?" She'd be like passed out. I've never seen anybody like go from 0 to nothing so quickly.
Her and Brandy should drink together.
Oh my God,
Brandy's terrible.
I'm like, you guys are the worst drinkers. The fact that you haven't been abducted and ended up in Mexico with duct tape and shovels. Amazing, yeah. I'm like, this is crazy.
You remember that little house I lived in Zilker? Yeah. And that couch was up against the wall of the bathroom. It's like whatever that was, not even as far across as this room right here. And the first time Brandy was over at my house, and I made margaritas, and she hadn't even finished a margarita yet. And she's like, I gotta go to the bathroom. And she gets up and she starts walking, and she just leans more and more and more. And I'm like halfway, like, should I, like, I don't know if I should. And by the time I feel like I should definitely grab her, I feel like it's too late. And she just barely gets to the door frame and catches it. I was like, you don't drink much, do you? She's like, no, not really.
Yeah. Which to me isn't a bad thing. It's kind of a, you go over and have like a glass of wine and you're fine. But I mean, I can't imagine sitting there and slugging that stuff back day after day. It's rough.
And it's so hard on you metabolically, and it messes with your sleep so bad. And it's just,
well, I feel like you can process, like this is, I think you and I discussed this in private, but like even like a lot of these young bodybuilders use these like Tren and some of these really, really toxic drugs that aren't been approved for humans. I mean, they're basically cattle drugs that they've some taken down. These guys are using, and these guys in their 18, 19, 20, 21 use it and really have no effect. Whereas if you were to use those same drugs in your 30s or 40s, you have some fucking catastrophic things going wrong with you. So I wonder if when you're young, you're probably still in this kind of positive growth state up until about the age of 26, you can, probably torture yourself pretty good, take a bunch of illicit drugs that are probably meant for cattle and drink alcohol and do these things and tear yourself up and probably not have the same effect. Whereas if you do those in your late 30s, 40s and 50s, you're going to have some catastrophic problems.
Yeah. I mean, you're so metabolically durable because you're the prime of the species at that point, right? You're supposed to be reproducing, providing, protecting, and, whatever, battling. And, you think about how we evolved to hunt, like, running down animals till he existed, or for like fighting animals that are way stronger than you, way more powerful than you with spears and whatever. And like, I mean, I imagine, the equivalent of war, which probably monthly, quarterly, I mean, daily. Maybe daily. I mean, it just seems like probably any time you saw somebody from another tribe or clan, like it was on, right? Yeah. And so, like it makes sense that you have that super durable age. And same thing with like, I mean, even younger than what's legal, but I mean, probably, females are probably primed to start having babies around 14 or 15 years old, because that's when they're super elastic. Like their growth plates haven't even necessarily closed everywhere. They're, their pelvises can stretch apart and everything can come back together, and just way safer. And then the older and older you get, the harder it is to get pregnant, the harder it is to deliver safely.
Well, they always showed Sofia Vergara when she had like her son, I think when she was like 18, and like the kid, she's probably now in her 50s and her son's probably in his like late 30s, early 40s. Mm-hmm. And like you see her and like she had this kid so young, and it's like, she looks, one of the more beautiful women I've ever seen. Yeah. And it's just, like that ability to have it. But I wonder about the durability too, as we age. I wonder if there's a huge genetic component. We have a mutual friend who recently was saying felt like his skin was thinning. Yeah. He goes and, whether he's doing jits or anything, he gets nicked up and feel like his skin is very thin. Whereas if you look at a lot of these kind of genetic things, they are definite things with, with aging. Like, I mean, the fact that my mom's 84 and she goes in and they're like, the birthday's wrong all the time whenever she goes and sees the doc. Yeah. And she walks and takes no medication. And, she's constantly like, how much longer do I have to do this? I'm like, you just genetically have avoided a lot of stuff and have, always been pretty healthy. I mean, no major issues. I mean, so I wonder if there's
genetics is a huge role. I mean, especially it's unquestionably, it's a huge role. The skin, is, obviously it's a very large organ. But it kind of tells the story of how hard you've been on yourself, but think about the genetic difference. I mean, if you're like from an African descent, you can get a ton of sun exposure. Like, how many like 60-year-old black guys have you seen that could have passed for 30 or 35, right? Just because their skin doesn't really seem to age that much, and if they stay lean and muscular, like, I don't know, you look kind of same, 35, 40 years old. I don't know. Yeah,
Filipinos too.
But my mom's Irish and redhead, and like I don't really tan, and so I get freckles and spots, and
you're either red or white.
Yeah, I mean I'm a spotty leopard, and what he was talking about, I'm like, dude, you're so late to the party. I remember doing jits and coming out like just with cuts after cut after cut, and like somebody's gi goes across my face and it takes all the skin. Yeah,
and I don't cut either. I mean, you would think with the NFL stuff. Yeah,
are you Italian bloodline?
No, I'm my grandparents are from Denmark. My great grandmother was from Sweden, and the rest of my family was from Ireland and England.
Yeah.
So I'm
The Viking bloodline is probably what made you really
we got some DNA test, and it actually came back that we had some specific gene for Viking.
Yeah.
Like it was, I don't know. They were like, there was some like kind of, I don't know what it was. It wasn't 23andMe. It was something else my mom did. Yeah. But it came back specific that there was some gene that was associated with like Viking seafaring people that they figured out. So those are my.
Yeah, the Celtics are an amazing kind of hardy breed of and they're so freaking big, man. Like all those,
like the Danes. Yeah, I mean my grandparents are from there's a beach town in South Denmark called Faaborg. Mm-hmm. That was her last name. You know, when they came to America, where are you from? Faaborg, and that's the last name they got. So it's and then my other grandmother was from Sweden. So my mom's grandmother was actually from Sweden.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I was on a Dutch submarine, and I was by probably 3 inches the shortest guy on the submarine. Yeah. And it's like this is a submarine. This is where you're supposed to put your short people.
If you go to if you go to Denmark, you go to Holland, not so much Sweden, but when we went to Finland and Norway, there were plenty of dudes as tall as me, if not a little taller than me. Yeah. Like, we went to bars and I want to say we were in Holland and went to a bar, and every bouncer was 6'6", 6'7", 6'8". I mean, they weren't as broad, but they were all equally as tall.
Did I tell you my Norway story when I went and got pizza? So the first night I was in Norway, first time I ever went to Norway, I was in Oslo.
When is this? How long ago?
2006, 2007, something like that. We go in there, just like 3 of us, Navy, we're staying in a hotel. We just walk in, trying to find something to eat. It's pretty late. So the only thing that seemed to be open was this pizza place. So we go in there, we sit down, we start ordering a pizza. And there's this table off, maybe as far as that rack is away from me. I keep looking at this dude. He's really big. I don't want to piss him off and make him think I'm staring at him or something, but I'm just kind of glancing. I'm like, dude, that guy looks really familiar. And then it just kind of hits me. I'm like, that's Sven Carlson, dude.
Oh, fuck.
World's
Strongest Man.
So I walk over, I'm like, are you Sven Carlson? He's like, yeah, I am. Come here. And he like pulls me in, sits down and talks to me for like 3 hours. I mean, just nonstop. And I take a picture with him. And there's this picture of him. He's like leaning on my shoulder, and I look like a 6-year-old girl next to him or something. He's so thick. And bro, I mean, he's not super tall. He's not as tall as you, but he's just like so freaking big around, and just everything was so thick about him. I was like, wow, it's a different species or something, man. Yeah.
I read something recently that in Iceland, the language and the people have been so homogeneous for so long that even like the runes and the texts and the writings from like 1,000 years ago, the average person can still read.
Wow.
So like, like they'll go to these churches and carvings and they do like they can still speak and this. I mean, it really hasn't changed that much.
And I can't read the text of a 23-year-old.
Yeah. And I know my daughters text me and I have no idea what they're saying, but they just haven't evolved that much. I mean, it's just been such an interesting homogeneous society.
Yeah.
And but we had a funny Norway story. We were there. We taught. I'm terrible at geography. Like people are like, hey, you should come to Norway. So we were going to Sweden. We were teaching a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, oh, let's go to Norway. Yeah. So I figured they would be near Oslo. We ended up in Bodo, Norway, which is actually in the Arctic Circle. It's a fishing town.
Oh, wow.
We go there in the summer.
Way up there.
Yeah. The cool part is it's like the world's biggest maelstrom, which is like the big swirl, so we got to go see some really amazing stuff there. But we went to go teach this seminar, and first night we're out, we go out and like we went to dinner, and like all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, dude, we just dropped like $500 on like an average dinner. Like we got like a cheap bottle of wine and some food, and it wasn't expensive by their standards, but the conversion was so high.
Right.
So then we go to teach the seminar. It kind of fucked us up because the sun didn't go down. So we went to sleep in this, and I think we were disoriented. So we got there a little late, which of course everybody there had been there early, and they were pissed at us for being late. But we show in, my jokes are bombing. And finally I was like, well, all right, dude, like cut us some slack. We just flew halfway around the world. Like we'll fucking get going. So we break for lunch. We go to Subway. We got 3 6-inch Subway sandwiches, chips, and drinks, and it was the equivalent of $125.
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, God damn, this place is expensive.
Yeah.
And, not that we didn't have the money to spend, but you're like, a 6-inch Subway?
Yeah.
3 of them. So we got like 18 inches of sandwiches for like $100 and then drinks in this. It just, man, it was, and then what was cool was one of the guys that was at the seminar, he was like native, of like whatever their kind of Eskimo people are.
Yeah.
So their family had hunting rights to be able to harvest whales. So we went out to this like local yurt, and the guy had cooked us this traditional Norwegian deal, and it was seal blubber that was frozen, and then there was this stew with whale meat.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry, it was whale blubber, and then seal meat, and like all of this like traditional food, and then we drank what like their version of mead. It's like a honey deal. Mm-hmm. It smelled like pepper, honey. It smelled like the best thing ever. It tasted like battery acid. Mm. But we sat out there and drank this fucking moonshine that was awful, and ate all this traditional food. And if you've ever had whale, it tastes like it's like red meat, but imagine it's been bathed in iron.
In iron?
In iron.
Oh, yeah.
It has like the highest iron taste.
Yeah, yeah.
So imagine like cutting into a steak, still steak consistency, but no consistency, almost like a fishy consistency of iron.
Yeah.
And then the blubber was frozen, but it was almost like candy. It was so sweet. And had all these lingonberries and all this traditional food.
Do they have to kill the whales with like
traditional methods?
Traditional methods, yeah.
I think a dude goes out there.
There's a place in the Grenadines like that too. It's like this one little island where you can they're still allowed to go whaling, but they have to use
traditional means,
hand thrown harpoons and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the deal was they could go out and harvest as like a part of whaling rights or something.
Yeah,
but it was, I mean, I can't imagine necessarily killing a whale, just because I think they're super cool.
Yeah,
but that was
seems a little majestic.
Yeah,
kind of like killing a horse or something.
Yeah, like I don't know, like or killing an elephant.
Yeah,
like
an elephant.
I think like every time I've ever seen an elephant. I've never seen them in Africa. I've always seen them at like zoos or circuses or other things.
Yeah,
I always like feel awful for them because they look so sad.
Yeah,
like I just think they're I mean, like to the point where I didn't even want hold on, let me pass this. Elephant cowboy boots. I remember I went to go get custom boots, and they're like, "We have these elephant skins." I'm like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah,
I don't like cows or.
I got to say, I have a pair of elephant boots on right now.
Yeah,
and. I didn't give it any thought when I had them. I said, "What's the toughest thing you have?" They said, "Elephant." I'm like, "All right, that." And then it wasn't really until
those are cool boots.
And that it wasn't really until I
thought about it.
Yeah, thought about it. Like I think the next time I saw an elevator or something, I was like, "Oh, yeah, that kind of sucks." But I mean. Hopefully they didn't kill the elephant to make my boots.
Yes,
but it's like hopefully that was around anyway.
Did you ever see the new Tarzan one with the dude? Has the chick that was in Barbie? It was like the legend, like the most recent Tarzan one.
Margot Robbie.
What was it?
Margot Robbie.
Yeah, with Margot Robbie, and then he was in that Badass Vikings movie. I can't remember the dude's name, but there's a scene in there where they're like at night and they come up and the elephants are there and you can see like I always thought like those are cool ass animals.
Yeah. They're amazing. I mean, those things live a long time.
Yeah.
Those got some huge genetics. And when those things decide to stampede, man, there's nothing on the planet's going to stop them except our guns.
Oh yeah. And Alexander, Skarsgård.
Yeah. Another guy.
Yeah, no, it's a badass movie.
Yeah,
yeah. No, I watched it on a plane, and it was one of those movies I came back and I watched. So there's like 3 or 4 movies that I watch pretty consistently.
Yeah.
One is Collateral with Tom Cruise, where he's where he's the hitman.
Oh yeah.
With
that one. Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, with Jamie Foxx.
Yeah,
I fucking love that movie.
Yeah,
that one, and that Tarzan movie is one. I mean, there's
I haven't seen that.
The other one is the new Top Gun movie. I could watch that all day.
Yeah.
And then, there's a couple Tom Cruise movies I loved. Did you see the one where he was, the one with Emily Blunt? What's the one where he, The Day After Tomorrow?
Die Another Day or
oh yeah, Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Fucking great movie.
That one's awesome. Where he keeps
coming back.
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
Dude, that's one of my favorite movies. Yeah. Sorry. Edge of Tomorrow. God damn it, that's a good movie. And they're all Tom Cruise movies, and I know he's a total insane person, but I love him for it.
Well, I think most artists are pretty weird dudes. That's how they can be artists. But that Tarzan movie makes you think of that. You remember that Chris Rock bit way back, probably in the mid-'90s, where he's talking about how the superheroes are white. Superman's white, this guy's white. They said, even Tarzan, king of the jungle, white. I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Like when he said that, I'm like, yeah, white people don't really live in the jungle.
I mean, the original story of Greystoke, I mean, the original story, like the book was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been told numerous times. And
it's meant to be like a shipwrecked guy or something, right?
Yeah, he was like
supposed to
like
be
the House of Lords, and he was the Lord of Greystoke, and they get shipwrecked, and he kind of creates this Swiss Family Robinson treehouse,
right?
And then the apes come in and kill him, and then the mother ape ends up taking him, and then he's raised.
That's right. Yeah.
It's pretty.
Yeah, who knows, man? You see some crazy stuff from people who are like gymnasts and really into CrossFit, and they start screwing with their kids young, and their kids can do some pretty amazing things. And like 6, 7 years old, they're running monkey bars, climbing up and peg walls, and doing all kinds of stuff that I could never imagine doing. And
what you expose your children to, they'll master fairly early.
Yeah.
Like one of the
that's neuroplasticity, man.
Well,
you learn so much faster.
My buddy Matt has his son, I want to say is 6, and he's got another little boy who's 2. And so what happens is when you have your first kid, you don't really get stuff until they're ready for it. Like, we got our kids like, oh, they need to ride bikes. So we got them bikes.
Yeah.
Not realizing that the bikes are already there once the other kids show up.
Right.
So like all of a sudden I'm seeing this 2-year-old is like kicking ass on this like Razor scooter. And I'm like, oh man, he's great. He's like, yeah, he just picked up, Matthew's scooter and he's been tearing it up. And I'm like, the problem is this is what I tell people, if you have like your first kid, just go buy a bunch of whole shit, like buy a bike, buy a scooter, buy all the things that he might need when he's 6, and just make sure they're available to him. And then maybe there's some other kids to show him how to do it.
I think we definitely retard our kids' learning with the social science research, and I have like, I think it's very hard to discredit the story. So, when I had my first son, first baby, young couples, we build out the nursery and like repaint it, put in new carpet, have the murals on the wall, and then you have all the black and white checkered things with the red and like all the toys and all the games and everything you're supposed to have to stimulate your kids' learning, right? And of course, first they're in their crib. Then as soon as my son gets old enough to kind of scoot, I put him down on the floor. And you know how it is. Like I spent like a month getting this nursery ready and made sure that all the bookshelves were screwed into the wall so they can't be pulled over and all this stuff. This bookshelf is the bottom bookshelf is about 2 or 3 inches off the carpet. He crawls over every toy in the room, slides his hand underneath the bottom shelf, and pulls out a screwdriver that I had left when I was building up the room. Didn't care about anything except a screwdriver. How the hell did he know that the screwdriver was the only thing I wouldn't want him to play with? And that's the only thing he was interested in. And I'm just like, well, obviously all these things aren't as stimulating to him as that screwdriver was.
Maybe he saw you using it.
No, that had been left under there since before he was born, because I'd gotten everything done and I'd left it under there. And he was like, 3 or 4 months old. Like he was just barely, not even crawling well. It's kind of like scooching and crawling. And and it was from here to that wall, just straight under there, grabs the screwdriver out. And I'm like, all right, well, going to give a bunch of spoons and like safe tools and let him play with that, because that seems to be what simulated. And then, no big surprise, all he cared about was like tools and trucks and cars and construction equipment and stuff. And like that's what fascinated his brain for a while. So I don't know. I think the black and white stuff and black and white with the red contrast is meant for visual development, but whose visual system doesn't develop?
Well, and the other one is all those people have those things above the kids still. Yeah. Well, you're supposed to change them like every week. Nobody fucking changes them. Just have the thing and the kid looks at the same shit and gets bored seeing it.
Yeah.
No, it's I think with parenting, obviously there's every human being on this planet has entered through the same portal and goes through the same experience, right? Like, and we all live,
100% women.
Yeah.
Have given birth so far.
Yeah. I mean, women give birth to our species, regardless of how much you believe it, but everybody enters. And that's an interesting piece. Like there isn't a person on the planet that hasn't entered through the same way.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's like they grow in a woman and come out and like this whole deal. And so I think with this many data points, everybody's like, I'm going to do it better.
Right.
And then you realize that your function as a parent is to make sure that your child stays alive.
Right.
So, I mean, all this other stuff.
And watch them develop and encourage them not to do things that will kill them.
Yeah. I mean, just trying to like get them. And I remember my mom telling me parenting is the most difficult thing. If you look, but it's the most difficult thing you'll ever do, but it's not complex if you look at it from its root core, which is your job is to basically safeguard your children from killing themselves.
Yeah, lots of simple things are hard.
Yeah,
and it's a simple concept, but it's really hard to do.
So all these people, they want to do all these things. I'm going to do this and this, and it's like provide safety, and then teach them like the age old, prepare your children for when you're not around.
Right,
like teach them to make good decisions, not to do dumb shit in this, but then you also can't give your children your own fears. That's the one thing I've never done.
Yeah.
I feel terrible when the fears of the parent become the fears and the sins of the child, right? Like, well, I'm scared of cars, so then we're not going to ride in cars. Now you're afraid of this, or, the mom or the dad's scared to dogs, so then the kids are scared of dogs. I'm like, my job is to basically teach them problem solving and how to navigate this world.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest disservice you can do to your kids is to solve all their problems for them and keep them, bubble wrap them and keep them completely away from every form of disappointment, because eventually they're going to go out in the real world and they're going to get their teeth kicked in, because we all do. And if the first time they've ever gotten their teeth kicked in is when they're 25,
oh, geez,
they're not going to have any idea how to handle it. But it's like, you've been getting your teeth kicked in your whole life, but you have like some parents around that are like, hey, we all get our teeth kicked in, and this is how you bounce back from it, and this is what you learn from that, right? And you learn how to handle disappointment and setbacks, and you experience this more than I do, but like the whole concept that you see all these parents that are just so pathological about their kids being the best and winning at every sport and whatever. And I'm like, you learn a lot more from losing than you do from winning. It's like you should encourage your kids to have a really good attitude about sports and really get after it and compete at the highest level. But
I think
when you make people afraid of losing, like, that's pathological, because you're going to lose.
That's parents reliving something that they thought they lost.
Right.
What I've noticed is a lot of the parents that I've dealt with for many years, they're trying to live vicariously and trying to maybe fix the wrongs that they felt that maybe that they were dealt. Whereas for me, I'm like, I don't really have any of that, I also know that the coaches and the problems or any of the bullshit I dealt with just made me better at the end of the day. So I don't look at adversity as a negative. I hope that you get shot adversity early in your life. So, I mean, we had an intern that worked for here at Power Athlete, and I remember he was fucking up. He just wasn't doing what we needed him to do, and like we were busting his balls as we fucking do.
Yeah.
And he had like a huge emotional breakdown that this was the first time in his life at 23 years old that he wasn't told good job and that he felt that he wasn't doing something well.
Oh, wow.
Graduated college, so he'd gone all middle school, high school, college, and had done everything well. Everybody told him how great he was, and this was the first time he'd experienced failure. Was in his 20s. I almost fucking died. And I was like, shit. He's like, when's the first time you experienced failure? I'm like, failure has been my teacher for as long as I've lived.
That's actually kind of sad. I mean, like, that's kind of depressing to hear that. Like,
well, I was glad I could be the rock that he shattered on. But, you don't do yourself, like you said, you don't do your kids any favors by solving all their problems.
Right.
Like your clients too.
Right.
I'm sure you're out there trying to solve all their problems. Mm-hmm. If you were going to put like a definitive, and I had Dr. Hunter Waldman on, who's one of the guys from, he's a power athlete coach. He's a PhD, teaches at Northern Alabama, does a bunch of research on nutrition and supplements and whatnot. We kind of put a definitive guide. And kind of what I was planning on doing a little bit with this podcast was like Doc Parsley's definitive guide for, maximizing performance in this. I mean, you talked about earlier the basis of sleep. Mm-hmm. That, if you're going to, be awake for 16 hours, you got to sleep for 8. It's like a 2/3.
Yeah.
For every 2/3 you're up, you got to give me a third in sleep.
Yeah.
But if somebody wanted to like maximize their sleep, I mean, there's, like we said, avoiding alcohol, avoiding light before this. I mean, there's a bunch of little strategies associated with it.
Yeah.
But are there people that are just inherently bad sleepers? Is that something that happens?
There seem to be, like there are, I want to say there's like 81 or 82 different sleep disorder diagnoses or something like that now, which I think is just absurd. But like body habitus has a huge impact on it, right? And so people who are really overweight, undermuscular, over fat, and that is almost always that's almost always also present with inflammation. So you're chronically inflamed. If you're fat, you're chronically inflamed. Like there's no way around that. So you have chronic inflammation, bad body habitus. That affects sleep because that affects the palate and that affects your ability to breathe while you're sleeping. And then the more inflamed you are, the more acidemic you are, the more your pH is suboptimal, which affects your brain's registry of how much you need to breathe, which can affect stress hormones and all that other stuff. So that's like just being metabolically broken, out of shape, living a poor lifestyle. That's a big component of America. But what I would say is damn near ubiquitous. I mean, there may be 2 or 3% of the population that their sleep isn't seriously impacted by their stress levels. And again, stress hormones are good in the right proportion, right? The proportion that you need to stay alert, appropriately alert in your environment, stress hormones are great. The number one reason people can't sleep well, and this is the same for people who tell me I've slept great for the last 2 years, I can't sleep well, or I haven't slept well since I was a teenager. Let me guess, you're a straight A student and you're trying to get into Harvard and you're like trying to get a college scholarship or whatever. Like you're super driven at 15 years old almost always, right? So the number one reason people can't sleep, the number one cause of insomnia is what we call a psychophysiologic insomnia. It means you can't sleep because you're worried that you're not going to be able to sleep.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's funny. Like, like we talk about, I always have a new tool in the tool bag. There's always something new and exciting to try. Like, anything from food, nutrition, sleep, exercise, stress, hormones, peptides, SARMs, SERMs, hyperbaric, psychedelics, whatever, like all kinds of stuff. The most powerful thing I do is get people to take stress out of their sleep. And it's really just like a kind of a mishmash of things I've put together with kind of this little cognitive behavioral core to it. And it's, we have like a 4-page worksheet version of this that Megan or Shayla can give you to put on your site if you want your audience to download. But a lot of it I'm sure you've heard before. So like we know evolutionarily, we evolved to use the sun as our cue. We don't do that anymore, to our detriment. Just like we don't eat what we evolved to eat, to our detriment. We don't exercise the way we evolved to exercise, to our detriment. Well, I mean, we do as a society, as the Western societies don't tend to do this, and so you need to reapproximate that to the best of your ability. Evolutionarily, your brain wasn't ready to fall asleep for 2 to 3 hours after the sun went down. So the blue light left. That stimulates, of course, the release of melatonin from the pineal gland. That leads to hundreds of cascades that changes your brain chemistry completely, and eventually starts changing your body's physiology as well. And one of the first things that happens after the secretion of melatonin is the increase of the neuropeptide GABA, which slows down the neocortex and makes it harder for you to interact with the world. Right? So all your senses still work exactly the same while you're asleep. You just aren't paying attention to them. You aren't processing them. You can still see, feel, smell, taste, touch. All of that stuff is still there. You just aren't doing it. That's why I can turn on a light and wake you up. I can make a sound, wake you up. I can shake you and wake you up because you're still capable of it. You're just not. Your brain has slowed down. It's like we've lowered the action potential. Like we've set the voltage way lower to where it takes way more power to overcome that. That's what GABA does. You can overcome that by exercising, having bright light, going to a bar and chasing girls, watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like whatever. Like you can overcome that. You can sit on your computer with blue blocking glasses on and work on a work project that has a deadline tomorrow till 9:59 and get to bed at 10 o'clock and good luck going to sleep, right? Because you haven't let that GABA overtake you. So you set an alarm clock when it's time to get ready for bed. And when it's time to get ready, that alarm clock is just as important as the alarm clock that you wake up in, because the number one to number 50 important things that you want to do in your life are on the list. That's what we do first. We make a list. One side is a list, to-do list, as far out as you're likely to worry. You know me, tomorrow, that's about as far out as I worry. Some people like 6 months ahead, they're thinking about stuff. Like,
those are women.
Yeah. And then, so that's your to-do list. And then on the other side, you have your to-worry list. Your to-worry list is shit you don't have any control over, but you know you're going to think about it. You know you're going to worry about it. So you make this list. You make that during the day when your brain's working fine. You have it next to your bed. It's handwritten. You have a pen or a pencil next to it. So if you ever think about anything that's not on the list, you get it right. So alarm clock goes off. Say ideally you take an hour to get ready for bed, and you do the sleep hygiene things the best you can. Get rid of the blue light, lower your body temperature, settle down, don't exercise, maybe do some breath work, blah, 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 blah. Take your sleep supplements, whatever you do. Get in bed an hour later. And then until that morning alarm clock goes off, all you do is you lay in your bed and you rest, you meditate, or you sleep. That's it. You don't look at the clock. You don't think about anything on the list, because everything on that list is important. That's why it's on the list. If you're handling important things, you want to have the best possible you handling that, right? Like your best resources. Well, when are you your best? You're your best 90 minutes after you wake up till about 4 or 5, maybe 6 hours later. That's your best. That's the best you're going to be. That's the most capable you're ever going to be. That's when you're going to handle your list. So if anything when you're laying in your bed, say, I'm going to lay down here, I'm going to do box breathing. I'm going to lay down, I'm going to do progressive muscle relaxing. I'm going to say prayers. I'm going to meditate. Whatever it is that settles you down, you lay there and you do that until the alarm clock goes off. And if you fall asleep, great. If you don't fall asleep, who cares? Because that's the next best thing. You're laying there, you're recovering the best you can. Now, you're obviously going to sleep. When you wake up, it doesn't matter what time it is. If you need to go to the bathroom, come back, get in bed, lay there and start box breathing again. If your alarm clock's going to go off 15 minutes later, maybe you lay there and you box breathe for 15 minutes, the alarm clock goes off, and you slept for 7 hours and 45 minutes and you meditated or did box breathing for 15 minutes. Great. Get up and go do your day. The key to it, like that's all very prescribed and you can just follow those steps. And that's what I recommend starting with. But until you make that connection, when you're laying in your bed and you're not relaxing and you're not sleeping, until you make the connection that I'm screwing myself over. Like I have this thing that I have all this stuff to do tomorrow and I'm screwing myself over right now by thinking about that or by not resting or worrying about not resting. Because let's face it, if you can spend 8 hours in bed, if you sleep all 8 hours, great. We're terrible at realizing how much we've actually slept. So sure. You lay in bed and you do the closest thing to sleep you know how to do, whether that's meditation or prayer, breath work, or muscle relaxation, whatever you do. That's the closest thing. That's the lowest stress you can, you're lowering your stress hormones by doing that. And either you're falling asleep or you're not, you don't really know. And over time, like once you get to the point where you're like, hey, after 8 hours, I'm going to be the best at handling my list. So this is like, I'm really dedicating this 8 hours to preparing myself for that list. And once you make that connection, you'll never have sleep problems again. Like as soon as that clicks, you'll never have the problem again in your life.
So as soon as I lay down, I take 6 deep breaths, and I'm usually asleep by the 6th breath.
Yeah,
like it's universal. Like I've never had a problem falling asleep.
Well,
I've never, like the only time I had sleep trouble, and I know we talked about this, was after Jamie got her dog attack. I was waking up in these like weird like panic attack at 3 a.m. and it was 3:01, 3 a.m. Would like I'd go to bed at 9:30 and at 3 a.m. I'd wake up. And I would wake up in this like fit, and I was like heart racing and this, and it would take me a while to like calm back down and go back to sleep. And I kind of, fall in and out, but it took me, months to kind of get over that. And
it's challenging the value of your existence.
Well, it was
like your daughter.
It's it was a feeling of
the thing that you're meant to protect and safeguard and all that. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. I mean, one, the fact that I couldn't protect her from it, but I was glad that she was able to protect herself. 2, that the neighbor's a fucking piece of shit and didn't have insurance and refused to take any responsibility and pay for anything.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a bunch of medical bills associated, which is fine. We've done fine, but that somebody could be that fucking emotionally obtuse, broken, callous, and just fucking piece of shit. Yeah. That they would, one, not claim any responsibility, and fucking claim like not even to, want to at least help. Or
that guy get in a hunting accident or something?
No, fuck. I hope he lives a fucking painful, deathful life. He's old, so he'll die soon. And then, we'll go out there and just piss on his fucking grave every day. But it's a shitty deal. So I think the lack of like, 1, it happening, and then 2, the response of like the neighbor whose dog it was acting like that was extremely, stressful for me. But to see how resilient she is and how she came out the other side of this thing and is like, she, with the bandages on and the scars and everything, still wanted to go to school and was like in a wheelchair. And like one of the little kids saw her and like had a panic attack and had to go home.
Wow.
And she was like, even like, it was funny recently. She's like, I can't believe I went to school that banged up. Like what was I thinking? And I was like, you are your father's daughter. Yeah. Like you are like these things will not define you. And it's the reason you've been so resilient. When I got my blue belt, Shanji got up, and I didn't know I was getting my blue belt. And so Lobato had this big seminar. And after, Shanji was like, we're going to, I want to like call somebody up. And he told the story of, one of the things that, didn't necessarily force him, but kind of got him into jujitsu. He brought his daughter here, and then she got in this dog tack. And, when I pulled her out and she had said, Dad, I did jujitsu on the dog. I mean, literally, we had taught spider guard the last 2 weeks. Uh-huh. That dog knocked her down, and she like put her chin down and like fought that dog and was trying to control him and fucking fought him off. Yeah. And the crazy part is, for a 130-pound Anatolian Shepherd, the amount of people those dogs have killed, if you check on the internet, is fucking immense. Yeah. And that little girl fought, and that was what she said. So, Shanji kind of, made the joke. He's like, she said to Shanji, she's like, yeah, that dog didn't pass my guard, which was funny because, in 20 years of competition, Shanji never had his guard passed. Yeah. And Shanji made the joke. He's like, I never had my guard passed, but I never had a 130-pound dog try to pass my guard. Yeah. And then he gave me my blue belt, and I was pretty emotional, like, because I hadn't thought about it in a long time. So I got up there and I like turned around and I saw all these people, and I should have just been like, thanks for the belt, Shanji. But I was like, it's true. This thing will happen to Jamie. And as a result of, Alex, teaching this girl, and Shanji and, Victor and them like taking this girl and saving her life, I felt indebted to work with Victor and, coach these guys, which I've done. Now they've become like family to me. And then like realizing that something good came out of this, and understanding mentorship and, some of the pillars of Power Athlete in terms of mentoring and offering great information so that people can be the best versions of themselves. I didn't realize, even though we talk about this, I like it fucking hit me 100 miles an hour. Yeah. Like here's this moment and here, and, and I get a chance to work with these kids. And then here I am a year later, or a year and a half later. And now here these guys are tying a blue belt on me, which in the grand scheme is very low on the scale, but it was a cool accomplishment having done this for something I never thought I would do and kind of get into it. And now I kind of have this kind of makeshift family of Brazilians that, cared enough to train my daughter in her darkest hour where she came through. Yeah. And so now my goal is to train them so that, they can stand on the greatest, or the greatest step of greatness. So it's, and then every day I drive down the driveway, I drive past where it happened. And it's like this fucking motivator for one to like train, fucking prepare, right. Still go in and bust ass and do all these things. And it's like, yeah, it's a lot of, there's a lot of emotions that I deal with every single day, whether it be working with, it's a little flaccid, but a lot of emotion. Obviously living on the same property, seeing my daughter every day, training these guys in this, and kind of like the whole culmination. But when he gave me that blue belt, I like got up there and like was going to tear up, and I should have just not said anything in there, but I felt like, as you know, compelled to say something at fucking all these podcasts. Yeah. But it was a really interesting piece where I was like waking up at 3 a.m. and I realized, I was like, you can either allow this to become something that I need to go talk clinically, or I can fucking pivot this thing 180 degrees and realize that this is the, call that I need to be able to go out and do these things. And I think it was extremely motivating. But the one thing which for me, for like the motivation for me was seeing how resilient that little girl is.
Yeah.
And to see her being like, she was at, what is it? Like Urban Air or whatever, Hi-Fi, wherever they go. And some kid like asked her about her scars and she's like, oh no, I got attacked by a dog. And like someone was like, oh, what scars on your face? And she just kind of like, shrugs it off. It doesn't bother her in the least. Yeah. And seeing how tough and resilient that girl is, I'm like, dude.
Kids are so much more resilient than we give them credit for.
Well, it's, yeah. I mean, it's, I think as a parent, you're like, and even
we're all deathly afraid we're screwing up our kids. We're doing the wrong thing, Well,
like you hope you've done enough, but I mean, even for the people within our Power Athlete family, like one of my nutrition coaches hit me up and it was like, hey, one of the guys that, we're doing is having some issues in this. And he kind of told me about it. And I was like, dude, give him my number. He called me and we talked, and he was having some issues where, he can't put on a pound. He's eating 3,000 calories in this. And he was having stomach issues. So they gave him a bunch of Prilosec, basically cemented his stomach. Yeah. And then they were like, oh, your esophagus is small. So they went in and they augured it out. All of a sudden now he's getting terrible acid reflux because I think the narrow deal. And what do they want to do? Give him the Prilosec. It's already hurt his kidneys in this. And he's like, the chance for esophageal cancer and stomach issues goes up. And I'm like, yeah, no, I had a dad and a half sister that passed away from something like this. Yeah. So, being able to get him into the right place in this. And I feel like, those who have the ability to invoke change have a right to invoke change. Yeah. And, if there's somebody that I can make a quick, easy adjustment or a change or help somebody get on a different path, like that's what we're here for. We do these podcasts and people glean information. I know people have listened to your podcast and you've gotten clients out of it and friends and, people have got information, but I feel like we've, in effect, mined so much good quality information and there's so much nonsense in the world. You just can't help but give it away and hope that somebody at least gets a little bit of it.
The hardest thing in my life is not helping people. Like I go to a Christmas party, I go to some sort of mixer and somebody starts telling me whatever. Something they've heard from Dave Asprey or Gary Brucker or whatever. And I'm like, oh man, like.
So wait a minute. So the calories don't count in butter coffee.
I'm like, I just can't let this go. Like, all right, here, let me, but I heard, I forget who I heard say it, and I'm probably not going to get it exactly right, but it was, I think it might've been Jordan Peterson. And, he said, if there's something that you can do that will improve your life or the lives of those around you, you're morally obligated to do it.
100%.
That's hard to argue with. Jordan, like, how do you say, nah, like just because it'll help them or help me doesn't mean I have to do it. It's like, well, Jordan Peterson, what else am I doing?
He said so many, of the things I've read and, heard him speak in podcasts and whatnot, and even seeing him in person and go and see him again. He said so many things that were so impactful to alter the trajectory of lives. Yeah. And then you'll hear people shit on him. And like, like that movie that came out where it was like, I forgot where they, the one with Florence Pugh and, where the guy was like kind of a cult leader and the guy was like, oh, I was imitating Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson's like, what the fuck? Yeah. Like when have I ever, like, it's amazing to me where you look around and I'll hear people shit on him, say these things. And I'm like, all I've ever heard is an intelligent man asking questions who's got such a big heart and extremely thoughtful and intelligent, who's thought things through.
He has zero hubris and just says, this is what the literature says and this is how I understand it. That's it. That's all he ever says.
And has a clinical knowledge as being a clinician in terms of...
has his 10,000 hours of expertise in.
And has worked with these people. He's talking about like cross-dressing. And he's like, I've worked with a ton of cross-dressers. It's always sexual. Right. These guys, pushing their dick and balls back and dressing up like women and going and reading to children because they think it's fun. No, there's a sexual component to this. Yeah. And to say it's not is disingenuous.
I've heard him called a pseudo-intellectual. Yeah. I'm like, all right, well, Jordan Peterson is pseudo-intellectual. I want to know who is intellectual.
Well, I heard them refer to Rob Wolf as a pseudo-scientist. Right. And my thing is, if Rob Wolf is a pseudo-scientist,
who's a scientist?
Then who's a scientist? Yeah. One of the most intelligent...
that guy only thinks scientifically. Like he can't have a non-scientific thought.
We're on a text thread in this, and Rob will fucking like make an observation, and I'll be like, I'm going to have to Google every part of this. He's so smart. And he's so intelligent.
Even when he was learning jujitsu, I mean, obviously he's still learning jujitsu, but I can remember the early states of his jujitsu, his eyes are just off to the side because it's a scientific process to him. He's sitting there thinking about the mechanics of that guy's hip. I need to, and you can just see him thinking through it. Like he's as scientific as it gets. And
so when they were calling
Jordan
him
Peterson says, "Oh, he's a pseudo intellectual."
I'm like, well, then who's intellectual?
Who's intellectual? One of the funniest things, it made me crack up laughing because there was no hubris involved, and because there was such a lack of self-awareness as to how freaking smart he is. I heard Jordan Peterson on a podcast, and he said, "Oh, I was in this museum about the Bible. I guess it's like this multi-story museum just about the Bible." He said, "And I figured out that, and I figured out that the Bible is the foundation of all truth." And he just says it very matter-of-factly, and then he starts explaining, and it just cracked me up. I'm just going, "Oh, you just figured out that little small thing today while you were at
I went for a run, and it turns out the Bible is the foundation of everything."
Yeah, I just unraveled the mysteries of the universe today while I was walking around thinking, and he didn't even. I mean, obviously, I think it's hard to appreciate, and it's hard for anybody to appreciate how smart they are relative to the rest of the world or something. But it's you would think when you get smarter, when you get to that level, that you would appreciate the fact that 99.9% of the world is not capable of thinking how you think. In volume, speed, technicality, accuracy, whatever. But yeah, and you think that that's a guy who could fill Madison Square Garden to talk about what he thinks.
He is. I mean, we're going to see him at the Moody Center, and it'll be sold out.
It's definitely. I bought tickets within hours of them starting because I know they're going to be sold out.
I mean, when we saw him before at where they do the ACL Live stuff, that's sold out. I was one of the first people to buy tickets. It's sold out because I know you went to go buy them, and you're like, "There's no more tickets." I'm like, "Well, good thing I got 6."
And I mean, you just think about how amazing that is in this world that we live in with all this quick soundbite, low attention span scrolling.
Yeah, but that's not us.
That thousands of people want to sit in a room and just listen to a guy talk about what he's thinking about right now. I have no idea what it's about. They didn't say he's lecturing about this.
It was something to the effect like the title was Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, or there was something had a biblical kind of context to it. So I assume, because a lot of his talk now is, interpreting the Bible.
Yeah.
And,
I've been through most of his Bible series. It's pretty fascinating just because there's very little Bible stuff in there. It's I think the book of Exodus is 8 hours worth of lecture, and, I don't know, it would take you maybe 30 minutes to read it or something, but he ties all this social science into it and psychiatry, and it's fascinating. He's just
is
really entertaining to just listen to somebody who thinks at that level.
Has he ever said if he thinks that the Bible is divine, or is it just a collection? Because I mean, it's always been amazing to me that people are able to, millions upon millions of people have analyzed every word, every letter, the nuance, the positioning, of that text, and for me, I know that in the 800s, I think it was at the Council of Nicaea, they decided which books were going to be in it. They had something like 68 books, and they selected less, and this, and they wanted to craft the word in such a way. So whenever I hear that, I think, well, what weren't we exposed to? What did they decide wasn't there? What didn't fit within the word? What have they changed? Right. So for me, that's where I found I read a bunch of stuff on the Dead Sea Scrolls, just because that's the earliest writing we have, and that might be from, let's say, a few hundred years after, let's say, Jesus allegedly lived, or if but they do know that there was a man from Galilee and who was born in Bethlehem, and this, and there was a carpenter. So it's fascinating whenever you get into this nuance. This many people are able to glean this much information, and we don't even know if it's all the information or the right information or what's been changed, what hasn't. So I always, I
have a hard time following along with that because I'm like, well, you're choosing to interpret that.
Yeah.
But you aren't choosing to interpret the other one. So what if I choose to interpret the verse you aren't interpreting and you choose? All right. And it's like,
well, there's also crazy stories in the Old Testament. Like, Like I can't remember the one where like the father gets like raped by the daughters. I mean, there's ones where they got to kill this. I mean, like the Old Testament shit.
And Moses was 900 years old and he built the ark over 120 years. And like, all right, that's kind of hard to swallow.
And all the animals of the planet went 2 by 2 on the boat, which means that 2 penguins swam from Antarctica to go on the which there's people that like that's.
So I mean, it's obviously not a literal book. I think Jordan Peterson's kind of idea of it is that it's, obviously it's not a book; it's a collection of books. It's a library, right? It's a library of books that were considered by whoever to be the important ones to combine in a certain order. What is validating about it is how much it's hyperlinked, right? Like Jordan Peterson shows a picture of this of like it's the first hyperlinked document in the world, and he can show there's like 36,000 connections in the Bible that like this refers you back to that verse. And obviously there's like the Gospels is like the same guy or different people telling the same story over and over again. So there's some links in there. And I don't think he's said it this way specifically, but kind of my interpretation of what I believe his interpretation is that the foundations for the Western world, really what we consider the Western values to be, or Christian Judeo values, right? Yeah. Like they just are. So that's what we base that off of. So if you live in that narrative of Western values, then the Bible is the most true thing because it's where you derive truth from. It's the first set of books that all other books then mimicked off of, right? And almost certainly would have initially all been compared to the Bible for their accuracy.
Did you know every civilization, their first written text is a heroic epic? So it makes sense. What's wild is, so you think about like
that's what would be passed down the most in the verbal world.
Well, yeah. Sure. So what would happen was these were all oral stories, right? And then they were, like think about the Iliad and the Odyssey were taught in iambic pentameter, which is extremely complex form of writing, but that cadence is very easy to memorize huge amounts within the human brain. Right. So, Homer didn't write, he was the guy that wrote down the Iliad and the Odyssey, but yet Homer probably didn't create the stories. He just was the guy that wrote it. Right. But Beowulf and, this, every culture, there's one in Sanskrit, there's one here. There's all through history, the first written text, and I took a class at Berkeley on this, and we analyzed them all. They're all heroic epics. Yeah. They're all hero's journey. They're all heroic epics. They're all taught, but every civilization has their first recorded piece of literature as a heroic epic. Yeah. And, and this predates the Bible. If Jesus was, what are we in 2024, let's say, so over 2,000 years ago, the Bible is since this, but leading up to that point, these stories. And then when you look at this person and the stories taught, are they just a collection of older stories? Right. I've been reading all the Zechariah Sitchin books, which are all based upon the Sumerian texts. Mm-hmm. And now that shit is like mind melting because they had like 9 kings that ruled for 230,000 years. And then the 10th king ruled for like 15. Yeah. Oh, it's the wildest thing I've ever read. And I got into those books, and that guy's just basically translating the Sumerian texts based on the Anunnaki and this. And I know, this stuff's become a little more prevalent because Joe Rogan's talked about it, but really fascinating stuff on our origin. And, the story of, the great flood and Moses and all that. They knew that was much longer than what they put in the Bible. That happened probably with the Unger Dryas and, through the floods and the, sinking of Atlantis, and probably between 10 and 12,000 years ago. Yeah. So, these stories, there was every culture, and this is wild too, all of these different cultures all have some tale of a giant flood. So we knew it happened. Yeah. And they also found, what were they, like fossilized sea stuff at the top of Mount Everest. Like the tallest peak on the earth, they knew was underwater at some point, a 2 mile this. So there's a lot of pieces within it I just wonder like how much of it are dates and fixed, and we'll never know. But
well, I've also heard somewhere that a huge number of religions have their god or one of their gods, something around a transformation of life around December 25th, because the December 24th to December 25th is the lowest point the sun is in the sky for the entire year, and it doesn't change. Like it goes, progressively lower.
The shortest day of the year was December 21st, which was yesterday, which is the winter solstice.
Well, but
or is it the equinox?
It's something about. I don't know if it's the shortest or I don't know. It's a matter of a certain amount of time before, and maybe the 21st to the 25th. I don't know, but there's a time where the sun's the lowest in the sky it'll ever be for the entire year, and it stays flat for a period of time, a day, 2 days, 3 days, I don't know, whatever it is. And then the day it starts going back up is from the 25th to the 26th. So that's the new birth. And
so the way I track this is our home faces due north. This is exactly north, and obviously west and east. So from my kitchen window, I know standing at our sink on the 21st, I know exactly where the sun is, and I put a mark on the window, and then over the course of the year, I see the sun go this way. It's pretty interesting, and I wake up and I see the sunrise.
That's something I would do.
So from my building, when I open up that back door where it is, if I look right to the right on the 21st, and I looked at it yesterday, the sun is all the way over there, and then I see it go all the way this way in the sun, and I know that it's the shortest day. I mean, it got dark yesterday at like 4:30.
Yeah.
But like all of a sudden it goes all the way this way, and then it's mid-June or July. I can't remember. I know it's December 21st, and let's say it's July 21st or whatever. I know that all of a sudden in the summer, it's as far over there, and then from my kitchen window, I can't see it. So it's pretty interesting. I see like the huge sway from this moment. So the way they position my house is perfect for this. But I have a mark when I know it's at the 21st. So yesterday I told my wife, I'm like, shortest day of the year. The sun's as far as it's going to go this way to the right.
That's interesting. Yeah, I haven't paid that much attention to that, but there's glass doors in the back of my house that faces exactly east. So I do notice throughout the year kind of where the sun breaks over that hill. In the end, it's like it's progressively moving off to the right hand side.
It's I would love. So my buddy John Aguilar, he the dry stone guy.
Oh yeah,
he kind of came down to do those steps. So I'd love to engage him in some like project where we like do something and make some structure where you can kind of view it. Like I'm like, there's got to be like
Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of
there's
thing. One day a year it lines up and goes through a crystal.
Yeah, or there's like two.
That's where you buried your $2 million worth of gold.
I wish.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I wish we had like two concentric rings, and like one of the rings faced it like wherever like the longest day of the year, and the other was here, and you could sit in a position and see him. So he's such a cool guy. He's been coming over on Saturdays, and we've just been doing random projects.
Yeah.
And it's pretty fascinating to see all the stone and all that. But I was like, I keep pitching him on this, and I'm like, I don't know what this looks like, but I would love to be able to create something that 100 years from now is still here, and people show up and are like, what the fuck is here?
Look it up
until they come and they just demo this whole area and build homes.
Look it up in Machu Picchu, because there's something like that there. I can't remember exactly what it was, but
how cool was Machu Picchu?
I think it would have been a lot cooler if I'd gone there straight away, but I'd already been in Peru probably 10 days before I got there. So I've already seen a ton of
rocks,
but some it's like the pyramids. I mean, you're talking about these hills that are so damn steep. You almost have to use your hands to walk up them.
Well, and the other one is so they have these huge stone blocks that they somehow got from the bottom to the top, and there's not a single mark of a rope. There's no scaffolding. There's nothing. The only thing I could think of,
you couldn't. And there's rocks there that you couldn't get a razor blade between. Yeah. Like they fit so perfectly, and some of them are as big as this room.
Yeah, no, they were talking about like 150-ton stones.
Yeah,
that they know where they quarried them.
Right. They know where the quarry is. They can tell you where the quarry is because we came from the quarry, and we took the train from the town where the quarry, and it was like 9 miles away. And even if you followed the valley around, I mean, it's And these are not
but they
subtle slopes.
There's no adjustments to the rock face, so there's no like rope marks and there's nothing. I mean, the only thing I could think of is there's that guy in Florida that built that thing. Like I think it's called the Crystal Palace. So there's and the guy basically
that thing made out of ice.
No, it's made out of these huge stones.
Okay,
and he built this thing, and he did it all by himself at night when nobody was watching. And he had this box, and he basically what he did is he could tune the frequencies of the stones.
Yeah, I've heard about.
And when the stones would vibrate, he could push them around and move them.
I've heard that theory.
They
for the
somehow
pyramids.
like either they were gonna like take his land or they bought it or sold it. He like moved the entire thing across the street to another property by himself in the middle of the night, and nobody saw anything.
This is in New York?
No, it's in Florida.
Florida.
Yeah, it's called. I think it's called the Jacob. Look it up. It's called the Crystal Palace, or the Crystal Stone Palace.
Is this guy alive?
No, he's since passed away, and he never told anybody how he did
interrogate him or something.
No,
This
but
dude is an alien.
He said
He's a time
he's
traveler.
like, I know how the ancients built all of these monuments and how they built it all.
There's no video or
and
writings from this guy?
there was somebody that spied on him that said he had this box, and he was like tuned. He had some box that he used to like tune them, and he found a vibration within the stones and could effectively, when they vibrated, they moved and they levitated, and he was able to push them. So the only thing that's ever made sense to me with Machu Picchu was they found a way to tune the vibration and somehow like either vibrate them or float them or something. It's the only thing that makes sense. But they can tune vibration.
I mean, I could.
Jake, did you find it?
Yes, it's called Coral Castle.
Sorry, Coral Castle. What did I say? Yeah, so look at it. It's called Coral Castle. And these huge stones, the guy built it by himself in the middle of the night, and nobody ever saw him do it. And he made the comment, I know how the ancients built the world. And he built this whole thing. It's
This is a mechanical box.
Yeah, he had some box that they said he saw, but I actually went to it when I lived in Florida because I heard about this. So I went and visited it, and it's fucking impressive, and they talk about it.
I could see if you're talking about a horizontal surface and you have, right, because I have this thing on my phone that's so slick, because you get the vibration, and now you don't have that, and I can move this around, but
Yep.
how am I going to go up a hill? Yeah, that's
The only thing I can think of
I don't understand that.
is maybe they had scaffolding and maybe they vibrated it up into it. I mean, it's
scaffolding made out of what? That
Wood.
holds 150 ton rock.
But what if it just needs a certain amount to vibrate off of? I don't know. I'm just making shit up. But in the legend of this guy, it says how they were both. But in the legend, he had some box, and what the box did is they tuned the stone into such a frequency that the stones were easily moved.
Yeah. Well,
Coral.
I know the
Coral Castle, not Crystal Palace.
I know the quarries for the pyramids were like 8 or 9 miles away, and they floated them down the Nile River.
Yeah, they have drawings of that, or cave, or there's hieroglyphic drawings of this thing.
So if they did that, they had to vibrate them onto a raft of some sort.
Well,
float them down the river, vibrate them off the raft.
Here's my thought. I don't think that Ramses built the pyramids. I think they're older. I think he did a construction project to rehab them, but I don't think he built them.
Have you seen? I don't think it's super solid, but Antarctica having 2 pyramids that mirror Cairo, and
I asked Andy and I asked Sorelli if they saw pyramids, and they said they didn't. But there's one.
I mean, there's a lot of Antarctica there.
Did you
but
see the one? There's one in Thailand.
I saw an aerial. I don't know if it's Google Earth satellite or if it was or airplane or whatever, but I saw an aerial of it. It's convincing. You can't say for sure, but it's convincing. And I want to say that they calculated that out to be exactly the opposite end of the globe. If you drew a line straight through
it wouldn't surprise me.
It would come out right there.
They found a pyramid. I want to say.
I think it's fascinating that we don't know how something was built. At least 4,000 years ago, right? But probably a lot longer than that. And we have no idea how he built it.
There's this pyramid, I think it's in Thailand, that I watched on that Graham Hancock deal. Mm-hmm. They have a pyramid that's dwarfs all the other pyramids that they were there's no written text of. It's like that cave that they found in China that had something like 30 million tons of rubble removed to make these cave system. And they found it. And there's no recorded history of it. Nobody claims it. Nothing. They have nothing. it just appears. And but that thing they have this huge pyramid in Thailand.
Oh wow,
that's massive. And the people, like, the language they don't know who carved it, they don't know how long it's been there. There's no stories of it. So I mean, it really points to this, like, there was probably more advanced civilization, and then, you know, ice age hits, Unger Dryer, the explosions, this, I mean,
it makes a lot of sense.
It's it's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah. And it makes a lot of, and when you think that way, it kind of points to to the very realistic possibility that the inevitability, like that what we're moving towards is inevitable.
Well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it's just like a recycling of the world. Yeah. It's like, hey,
well, that's what
98 or 99% of every species that's ever been on the planet is extinct, and so we're going to be one of those eventually. And then maybe something very similar to us comes along again, and maybe we're the fifth or sixth go around with this. Who knows?
Well, there's some pretty amazing fossil stuff. Like I've been doing a bunch of work around the property, and I want to get a ginkgo biloba tree. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're bitchin' big yellow trees. Mm-hmm. It's the oldest recorded fossilized tree they've ever found. It's like, you know, the earliest fossil was like 200 million years ago that this tree has existed. So they call it a living fossil. So I've been trying to get one because I think it'd be cool in the pasture. But I mean, dude, there's stuff like that. I mean, they know how long. I mean, octopus showed up, and there was no excuse, like no reason for them to just, there they are. And next thing you know, they haven't changed in millions of years.
Yeah.
We had a guy on the podcast who was a PhD marine biologist, and I'm trying to remember his name. It'll come to me in a second. But his comment was, every time life gets demolished or gets knocked back, it crawls back out of the sea.
Yeah.
And John Sapolsky is his name. But when he said that, I was like, ooh. But I mean, it's pretty amazing. Here we are standing here, like looking at these things, and like, so we've seen drawings and we hear the stories of Ramses building the pyramids and this, but then when they did the math for the time in which he said that he built them, it's impossible. They would have had to set a stone every 2 minutes, 24 hours a day for like 26 years straight to even attempt it.
Right.
I mean, it was theoretically impossible. I mean, there's no way slaves built it. I mean, just the numbers and the math, like, just don't align. Like the fact that it's, you know, true north, not just like but it's true north. I mean, it's level.
Plus, when have you ever seen master craftsmanship from slaves?
You don't.
I mean,
that's not how that happens. No. I mean, but that they encoded all of these different things within the world, like the circumference and the mass of the earth are all in the height and the sizes.
Right.
They know, like, the speed of light is in this. I mean, it's like if you were going to leave something that you knew everything was going to get destroyed, but you wanted to be able to say for millions of years that, you know, here are the numbers that matter. This is how you do it in mathematics.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be really cool that if there was a culture that was way more advanced than we are currently, you're just like, hey, we're on our way out. Let's leave something, and they could throw that thing together quickly because they don't, whatever. It takes a couple of years. I was like, yeah, whatever. We know how to do it. Like, well, we'll leave something behind that'll be easy to interpret.
Well, in the Zachariah Sitchin books,
and we're not smart enough to interpret it yet.
It's pretty wild. So what they said is that when the Anunnaki came, the reason that they came to Earth was gold was plentiful, and they needed the gold to put in their atmosphere to block the radiation from the sun because they destroyed their atmosphere. And so they came to Earth to mine gold. And so what they did is they genetically modified different versions of humanity to figure out which could be the best in terms of like mining their gold. So that's why humans were, created.
What's this from?
So Zachariah Sitchin wrote a series of books based upon the Sumerian texts. He translated all the Sumerian texts. So the Sumerians are why we have 60 minutes in a day, 360 degrees. Like all of what we know about time and measurements and all this comes from the ancient Sumerians, which are the oldest culture.
Okay.
Mesopotamia, right, like Mesopotamia, Iraq, kind of that part of the world. So the Sumerians, they had all of these crazy texts, and this guy went and translated them into a series of books. And so I've been reading through the books, and these are all their origin stories that, these beings that we know as gods, whether it be, and it makes sense when you talk about like the gods on Olympus and the Roman gods and this, it's all about the same people.
Right.
Came from this planet, and they're known as the Anunnaki, and they were these, like you see the pictures of the Sumerians where there's like a big dude holding a lion like a kitty cat. Like they were huge, and it's pretty fascinating, but going through all of the origin stories. And then they had like this, like, it was called like the record of kings, the list of kings. So the first 9 kings ruled for 230,000 years. And then like the 10th king ruled for like 15, and then 30, and then 20. I mean, it's really wild. So I've been reading through these books.
The Bible's weird,
it's called
with stuff like that.
Yeah, it's called The 12th Planet.
Yeah.
And just different. And so I just finished that one. I'm in the next one. And it's, as I'm reading these origin stories in this, I mean, it makes as much sense, even probably more sense than, I mean, like I read all the origin stories to my kids. Like if you read the origin story of like the Norse gods, how there was a huge giant, they decapitated and broke his head. And that's basically the world we live in. I mean, it's like it's his skull. But like when you read all these origin stories,
the world was spherical back then.
Oh, I don't know. But when you read all these origin stories, one's as good as the other.
Yeah.
Right. So God created the world, and on the 6th day or 7th day, he rested. I mean, they're like, you're reading them and you're like, they all are different origin stories. I mean, when you read the Greeks and you read the Roman, I mean, they all have origin stories.
And, in one way that I've only recently kind of thought of is like, well, shit, maybe they're all true. Like,
and they're just different interpretations.
Like maybe it's all different ways of describing the same thing, that there is some sort of universal intelligence, some sort of like master fiddler out there, something that's playing with this. Because it's like either something created everything or nothing created everything.
Well,
and nothing is it's hard to say that everything came from nothing. So,
well,
but if you have a God, where did the God come from? So I understand like all that, but it's like the fact that it's so recurrent, and that it's impossible for a society to not have a religion, right? Yeah. Like the leftists have a religion. The atheists in America have a religion. It's just not around God. It's around themselves. I find it's a political religion.
I posed this to Rob one time. I think it's more work to be an atheist than anything.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier to believe that there's something than there is to believe that there's nothing. There's a lot of work to say there's nothing. I don't believe nothing.
Right.
Like, I don't know if what religion, first of all, I don't believe there's anything that's organized religion that has super validity.
Right.
I grew up Catholic. And,
and that's what I'm saying. Like all the organized religions all kind of seem to tell the same story in a general sense, one way or another. So
but they're also about control.
Right.
Right. And they're about controlling the masses.
They've all been abused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are.
And they need to be separate from the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they are. I mean, it's, they need to be. Yeah. But that's what I'm getting into with this immortality key, that when you look at the original Christian mystics and some of the early stuff, it's ventured exactly in the opposite direction of what they originally envisioned it to be. I mean, there was a movie, I think it was called Stigmato, where this guy, like somehow, I'm going to fuck this one up, but basically what he finds is a text of Jesus, like the original writings, like, don't find me within the walls, find me in nature and this. And I remember thinking, like, I like that a lot more. Like, why do we have to sit in this building? Can't this guy be telling this to lease him outside so I can hear the birds chirp and the winds blow?
Right.
Like, why do I have to
That's always been my problem with Catholicism. It's like, there's somebody in between me and God. It's like,
well, they didn't encourage us to read the Bible.
Yeah.
So we went there. There were hymn books.
Because they interpret the Bible
yes.
for you. Yeah.
So you get a hymn book, and they tell you not to read the Bible. Just understand the teaching of God from us.
Yeah.
So then we would go and we would listen. And I always like listening to the homily. I mean, it was 4 stands, 3 sits, 2 kneels, and I was in and out in sub 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was just something we did every Sunday. And if we weren't complete fucking assholes, we get to go to McDonald's and get like a sausage patty egg and whatever the potato slip thing, the hash browns, right? And then the awful orange juice, but that was cool.
Yeah.
And, I would sit there and listen, and the problem I had, that everything felt disingenuous. They would talk about this and, Jesus washing the feet of the poor and all, this great man, Jesus. And I'm like, the stories you tell do not lend claim to you standing up there in front of this gold cross wearing this ornate outfit with this crazy fucking hat. I mean, we're in here and they pass around, you got to give them money for what? Like, it just, the whole thing felt disingenuous and it felt backwards to me.
It's always hard to believe in a leader whose claims empower and enrich him.
Like the Joel Osteens of the world.
Well, like everybody,
like
our politicians, like our leaders. It's like everything you say kind of endorses the things that gives you more power and more money. It's kind of hard for me to believe that that's the ideal when it's not what any of us want, And I have the same problem. Like I grew up Southern Baptist, and it was like a very shameful thing, like a very different world. And I really got turned off by organized religion. And I've been going to church out here recently.
I was blown away at your wedding. Everybody I met was from your church, and they were like, "Oh, I know Kirk from church," and I was like, "That goes to church?"
I started going when they indicted Trump, and I told Brandy, I'm like, "You're never going to church alone again," because I'm just thinking, like I went there for security. I stood by the door, took and then. And I really like the pastor. You met him, that big guy.
Yeah, he's a nice dude.
Good football player, like a guy's guy. I'd say I'm an enthusiastic advocate of Christian principles, because I think that's what the foundation, and so the foundation of society. So I'm trying to read and learn about them. But the pastor's father-in-law is a preacher, a retired preacher. And he's, the last 3 or 4 months, he's been driving a Bentley to church.
You know what they say? It's harder for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man to go to heaven.
Yeah. But you know what the eye of the needle is? It's the entrance inside the gate, and the camel just has to stoop. That's all it was.
Yeah. I know. I just thought it was a funny story.
Yeah, but it's just that's a kind of a turn off. It's like, well, is it like... Yeah, whatever. I could buy a Bentley if I wanted to buy a Bentley. You could buy a Bentley if you wanted. But
I live down a dirt road. I do drive the Bentley. I drive a Duramax. You drive a Tremor, which is the Bentley of Texas.
Yeah, and it's like there's the possible interpretation of it being a grift because you can afford a Bentley, and then there's a much more off-putting idea that a 70-year-old man needs to drive a Bentley to church. Like, what's that for? A godly man, a guy who's given his life to Jesus, and supposedly he's doing everything to help shepherd other people towards heaven or the eternal whatever. Well, why does he need a Bentley? Like, why would he want to drive a Bentley? And why should I tithe if he's driving a Bentley? Like, obviously he's done just fine.
Well, I don't know. It's
those are the things that turn me off about organized religion.
It's the Tammy Faye Bakers, it's the Joel Osteens, it's all of these people that claim this sanctimonious religious right, and yet as he goes out and climbs in his helicopter and gets on his G5 and this. Right. And you're like, I'm really glad you have all that stuff, but that stuff was bought by donations and old women sending in money to fund your deal. And is it, who am I to tell you? But then it's I don't know. It just feels disingenuous.
Yeah.
Is it better than all the others? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's, I always feel something is broken when I'm sitting in a church.
Yeah.
Right. And like, if anything, like I feel more connected to whatever this thing is when I sit outside and I walk down to the creek, or I work on the land, or, any of the stuff, or like the improvements, or any of the things, even just when I graded that hill and we did those steps, as I was sitting out there the other day at sunset, Jamie and I were sitting out there, and like I saw the birds and this and the deer and everything. And I feel more connected to whatever the spirituality or whatever this thing is in this world than I do within the walls listening to somebody fucking preach at me. And I use preach in that term where they're literally like standing above you, talking down to you in many ways. And that just never made sense. And then when I was reading this Immortality Key, the exact thing that I felt as a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old sitting in church is exactly what he discussed. The ego that we have, the what'd you call it? The amygdala. Yeah. That, forces us to analyze all these different things. Is this a grift? Is this bullshit? Am I safe? Am I not? All these things. Yeah. This is ingrained within us. And yet here we are sitting in this place where this doesn't seem like what it should be, with somebody telling us these things that, how do we know? Show me, prove it to me. I can't. You have to, where else in my life? Hey, you know what? I got a financial advisor who says I'm going to make you 7 return 1. Trust me.
Just have faith.
Just have faith. If he says that, you're going to fucking fire him.
Yeah.
Hey, is this meat? How old's this meat? It's safe. Have faith.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't, hey, did you fill my car up with gas? Have faith. Right. Like, there's nothing that we do in this world that I survive upon faith.
Right.
So yet this one place for it, and not to say that I don't believe in somebody bigger. It just, And then the crazy part is when people go kill each other over it, where I'm like, this is like arguing, killing each other over who has a better imaginary friend.
Yeah.
Feels crazy to me.
I think it's hard. I think it's hard to say that, that you're right and everybody else is wrong, regardless of what your religion is. But I think it's also completely fair to say that, hey, there's something bigger out there. There's some higher order or something. There's some kind of maestro or something out there.
As long as it makes you a better version of yourself.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
But if it makes you a
but I
worse
don't
person.
understand it. So I'm open to the idea that exists, and that's where I'm at. I'm like, hey, very well could be. Like if it turned out there's a rapture and Jesus walked into Earth, I'd be like, go figure. I mean, like, not shocked, but not really sure I believed that. But hey, that's within the realms of possibility. I don't know.
But even if, like, that, like, somebody shows up and it's the holy reckoning and you go up and you're like, have you been a good person? Have you done what you said you were going to be? Did you, take care of others? Did you leave the world better than what you found it?
Right.
If you can't answer yes to that, then, like, I don't think, like, oh, you just happen to, go for the right. I don't know, man. Like, a lot of these, like, weird fucking, the only thing I could call, like, because I went to CCD, there was all of these weird, like, clauses.
Yeah.
Like, if you touch yourself and it feels good, you're going to go to hell.
Right.
How do you tell an 8-year-old kid that, like, if you touch your privates and you like it?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And then they asked us, how many of us has touched our privates? And we were all like when I pee?
Yeah.
Oh, you can touch it when you go, like, if you got to hold yourself when you pee. Yeah. But if you like touching yourself, wait a minute, dude, are you saying I shouldn't like to go pee? Like, it just,
this physiologic need you have, like,
it didn't fucking make any sense. And then it was, like they just had all of these rules and this and stipulations in here. And I'm like, there's no fucking way. Like, I'm not going to be able to remember all this.
Yeah. To me, it's like, I don't know if it's all the Abram religions. I don't have any kind of sophisticated beliefs around religion. But I know the foundation of Christianity, Judeo-Christian values is that we're all equally created, right? We're all equally valuable, and we have sort of God-given rights. Whether that's a magic
life,
person
liberty,
given it,
pursuit of happiness.
But hey, you have the right to not be killed. You have
the right to live the life that I feel unimpeded by you,
and you have the right to say what you want to say and do what you want. Like, so you have these God-given rights. If you say, well, there's no God, all right, then what are your rights and where do they come from? If the rights are given to you by the government and you're living in a democracy, then they can just vote the rights away. So if they can vote them right away, do you even have rights? And if they can imprison you for them today and not imprison you for them tomorrow, decide whether, like, what are rights then? So that's, to me, kind of the quagmire. Like, that's the part where it really gets slippery to me. I'm like, well, or we kind of have to have a God if we're going to have rights. And if we don't, then it's really easy to argue that you don't have the right to do anything. Like, if the population, if your little society, your clan, your club, your tribe, your city, your state, your country, the world decides, you can't eat meat anymore, then you're like,
it's my religion.
I'm like, okay, well,
it's like in The Mandalorian.
I can't eat meat
when they were
anymore.
like, hey, hand your guns over. He's like, I can't. It's my religion.
Yeah,
that's what I joke is that.
I've never watched The Mandalorian.
Oh, so in The Mandalorian, he comes up and they're like, hey, you got to leave your guns. He's like, I can't. They're like, why? He's like, they're my religion. I can't be separated from them.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's what I joked. I'm like, he was a Texan.
Yeah.
I was like, guns and barbecue. Like, I feel like God-given rights are to own weapons and to be able to defend myself and be able to lift weights, eat meat, eat a high-protein diet, and you know what? Not be an asshole.
Well, I mean, it's mind-boggling to me that there is even a concept out there that a government of people who are elected by the electorate can tell the electorate that they can't eat something or can't do something or can't. I'm like, what? Like, what? It's like, you all want to do this. We're saying you can't. You elected us to represent you. And our representation of what you want is to tell you can't have what you want. How does that make any damn sense? Why does the government even have a say whether or not I eat meat or drive a car or drive a truck or drive a diesel or drive an electric? Like, why would they have any say? That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Well, what they're looking at, like, they're trying to arrange things in such a way for the general good. Like, how do 330 million people live in concert? So
Right, but they don't do it for the general goods. They do it for themselves.
Yeah, because special interests and private interests are what pays for them.
Right. Yeah.
But so the problem I've had is like, okay, if drugs are bad and you want to outlaw them, it's fine. But why are these drugs okay and these aren't? And the ones that you say are okay that gets pursued by the pharmaceutical companies can be just as abused and just as deadly, if not worse. Like I'll just
the government breaks their own laws all the time.
Well, it's like when Kate had her surgery and they gave her that gabapentin.
Yeah.
Dude, that I told her, I was like, hey, they want me to take this, and and even I think the doc or the nurse was like, oh, this is super benign. And we had just had that guy on the podcast. Remember we did with Sorelli, where that guy was talking about like getting off all the drugs were fine, but the gabapentin was life.
Oh yeah, the pilot.
Yeah, the pilot. Yeah. So she was taking it, and I was like, whoa, don't take this. Yeah. And she still had to it's messed up her GABA receptor, so she has to take the GABA supplement, which I get from you. And it's just fascinating that they don't necessarily know what the long-term effects of any of this stuff. I mean, look how many people have died from opiates and Oxycontins and this, and these people are multi-billionaires.
Completely safe. Yeah.
And have made billions of dollars. And then all of a sudden they get sued and they got to give a couple $100 million, but they've already made their billions. Yeah. And, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, and that mushroom that grows out of the ground, you're going to go to jail because that's a Schedule 1. Right, to eat that.
And the FDA's charter says that if something exists in nature without being modified, like you haven't done anything to modify it, it just exists in nature, it grows, and you can consume it, it's beyond their reach. If you put it in your body and it has physiologic effects, it's beyond.
So are they saying because people dry it?
So marijuana, you can just go grab a marijuana bud and eat it. That shouldn't be illegal. Alcohol, completely synthesized, completely processed, not a drug.
Well, look how many people die from alcohol.
I mean, they do it all the time.
Look at DUI. Like
the FDA gave a patent to Pfizer for vitamin B6.
For niacin? No, B6 isn't niacin, is it?
No, I don't remember. I don't care. So they have a patent for vitamin B6 because it's the most common serious vitamin B deficiency. There's people who can't methylate, obviously. And then the other one is P6P or something like that next stage. And they're trying to get a patent on that too. And then once they do, they have complete control over everybody who has that genetic disorder for something that you can get from food. But if they have the enzymatic deficiency where they can't convert it to P6P or P2P, whatever the hell it is, drive me crazy. I got to go to the bathroom.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, dude, we're at like 2 hours and 40 minutes. So I think that's a pretty good place to end.
Okay. We're going to wrap it up.
Yeah. All right.
Call it a day.
Well, Doc, thanks for coming in and chatting on another episode of Power Athlete Radio. If you guys want to check out Dr. Parsley, drkirkparsley.com, we'll have all of his stuff in the show notes. I will also tell you, I am a huge advocate and daily user of Doc Parsley Sleep Remedy, which you can actually find at Doc Parsley Sleep Remedy.
DocParsley.com or SleepRemedy.com.
Which I take. I know some people take one. I take two, and I take two. But I'm also a big dude.
Our mutual client takes two. He's not a big dude.
Oh, well, I have been a user and a advocate and believer for many, many years and love it. So I consider Doc not only one of my best friends in the world, but also he's on speed dial for me. So yeah, I appreciate you coming in and chopping it up.
Yeah, man. My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. See you. Hey there, Power Athlete Nation. Big shout out to all the heavy hitters who stuck around till the final whistle. If you've been soaking in the knowledge bombs and epic tales we've been dropping for free, here's your chance to be a game changer. Swing by klfi.com/powerathlete and toss a few bucks our way to keep the podcast fueled and firing on all cylinders. That's ko-fi.com/powerathlete. Your support makes a difference. See ya.